Let's do the damn thing. What's up, BSers?
It's all about that BS, baby.
Fred, Scott, Ryan, and James in the house tonight as Drew is home with the sniffles. Let's put it mildly.
The 2021 sniffles.
2021 sniffles, that's right. We got a lot to talk about on tonight's show. It has been a crazy week at the castle with the Ravens, to say the least, as they're in kind of like a bit of a makeover mode right now. We get a change into the guard at the top, some young blood coming back in the system. So we got a lot to cover with the Ravens. Some good news, I think. Some fresh faces, or some fresh old faces.
Yeah, and Super Bowl, it's all set, gentlemen. You ready for your predictions?
I am.
Hashtag who you got?
I've been sitting on my prediction for the last week and a half. I think I'm good.
Yeah, I think we all have been.
It's been a whirlwind of news around the Terps football squad specifically. So we got special guest Ahmed Ghafir joining the show to break it all down, talk all things Terps.
Exciting, exciting. And in this week's rundown, we quickly catch up on some O's updates, a look in at the Olympics, and what happens in Vegas stays in national headlines.
Except for the 13th and 18th of March.
Okay, I'm going to tell you two, you better learn from this.
None of that ends in jail. We'll talk about that. Man, we're going to remind you guys, the team over at MD Crash, well, they've been evolving. They've expanded. More lawyers handling much broader spectrum cases, still handling all your auto accidents and injuries at work, of course. But now the team at Bowers, Hassan, and Herndon can help you with family law issues, from divorce to custody and child support. For any of your potential lawyer needs, save this number now, update it in your phone, 667-220-6500. Call or text them anytime. That number again, 667-220-6500. Get the team at Bowers, Hassan, and Herndon on the case for you. All right, fellas, it's time for some flock talk.
Yeah.
Like I said, it has been a bit of a whirlwind at the castle the last week. It's been a lot of changes, some going, some coming. And we got to start at the top, man. Team president Dick Cass retires after 18 years with the Ravens at 76 years old. Dick Cass, I mean, he's been basically a staple of this organization for as long as I can remember, and always held in high regards. Like anybody who's ever talked about Dick Cass internally with the organization has always spoken highly of him. So I'm sure he's going to be missed in many ways.
Yeah, and he's been a guy that usually stays out of the spotlight. He's not necessarily a guy that's been out there at times, right? He's been there
Except
for
some on the sideline for that Tucker field goal. And he's jumping around like a little kid. It was freaking hysterical. It was like my favorite.
Who wasn't jumping around like a little kid? Come on.
True.
All right.
True.
But no, I mean he's a guy that just he put his head down, in your words, right, and just got to work and did some things. And people kind of question and ask, like, okay, does he oversee EDC? Who does he oversee? Like, what did he do? So give people a breakdown. Like, what was his role, and the person that's going to be coming in, what are they going to be taking on?
That's kind of the thing with team president, right, is every organization runs their position or runs their titles a little bit differently, right? So some organizations might have a little bit more involvement with the team president in like player personnel involvement, contracts and trades and negotiations. Dick Cass didn't really dabble a whole lot in that. I mean, he was more from the finances and budgeting and non-football personnel side of things, corporate sales, operations, a lot of the behind the scenes things that you don't know where it all kind of comes from or where it stems from. He was a big part of a lot of like the stadium upgrades,
I was going to say
the entertainment value,
stadium upgrades, the social media, right, and him being a driver behind that, knowing that the younger generation was into that and just being knowledgeable in it, and those upgrades, the fantasy football pieces. To your point, what is everybody watching? Well, let's go ahead and put up something where people can pay attention to it, get them more immersed in the entire experience.
Right, and when you see these free agents that come in, right, and they come from an organization and they come here and they're blown away with the Castle and the Under Armour Performance Center. Well, he spearheaded those projects, right? That's what Dick Cass brought to the organization, and like I said, he's done a great job, right? You've never heard anything to the negative of Dick Cass, but at 76 years old, obviously retirement started knocking. So we got to move on, right? And, this was kind of out of the blue. I didn't hear any rumors about this potentially happening or coming, right? So for them to transition as fast as they did from Dick Cass retiring to then hiring and announcing his replacement as fast as it did, this is obviously something that was in the works for a while. Yeah,
it's something that obviously they were talking about. They were apparently doing interviews, and you're trying to narrow it down. That's a tough job, right? Because you're ultimately overly responsible for certain things and the way that things are run from a day-to-day standpoint. And so they go with some youth here. Now, a guy's 45, so you can call him older, right? I mean, it's older for you.
Not there yet.
You're getting closer. Don't worry.
Time.
But this guy, he's somebody that's got experience, and it's Sashi Brown.
Yeah.
Sashi has 13 years of NFL experience. This guy's been an executive in many different facets, many different levels. He was an SVP and a general counsel for the Jaguars in 05 and to 2012, back when they had a decent team, an okay team, better team than what it's been.
Yes. Really, the time the Jaguars were any good was like in the 90s. Beyond that, they've not been very good.
Well, he also served as executive vice president of football operations for the Browns from 2013 to 2017.
You're not selling me on why this guy's any good.
He most recently served as president of Monumental Basketball, the umbrella organization established by Monumental Sports and Entertainment CEO Ted Leonis. By the way, loose tie, during his tenure there, we actually attended and did we'll call it a media session at something that his company produced. That was the arena football game that we went to. Yep. So he's obviously got that experience. He's worked at a law firm in Washington, so he does have the local ties.
Funny enough, the law firm that he worked at in Washington actually was Dick Cass. He worked with Dick Cass there. And Dick Cass
came highly recommended, obviously.
He actually recommended for him for that job in Washington. So
but they're nowhere near as good as Bowers, Hanson, and Herndon. So no one needs to talk about them anymore.
But he's going to be, this is the second time that a black team president in the NFL currently, the second one this year.
Yep.
Another interesting timing thing. Recently named by Hugh Jackson's executive of his foundation as one who took money for tanking while in Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot of allegations, a lot of things bouncing around with this whole situation with Flores and Hugh Jackson and all that stuff now. So we'll see what happens when the dust settles. But at the end of the day, his role with the Jaguars and his role with the Browns were very different than what his role is going to be with the Ravens. I know a lot of people, when you look at his time, because he was a GM for, I think, 2 years in Cleveland, and he's responsible for some of the worst drafts. I think he had one of the drafts where Cleveland had like 14 picks 1 year. And, I mean, if you go down the list of these guys they drafted, all of them were busts.
Johnny Manziel.
I mean, all of them were absolute busts, right? And that's the thing I think a lot of people are afraid of is like, why are you bringing a guy like this who's had such a bad track record as a GM, into your organization? Well, that's not where he excels. And the Ravens aren't hiring him for that position.
Nope.
They're hiring him for a team president, which again, he's going to go right into the same role as Dick Cass. They're not redefining the position. It'll be Cass, Harbaugh, and DeCosta all reporting to Bisciotti directly. They won't be reporting,
up the chain. Yeah,
up the chain, right?
Which is also weird that your head coach isn't reporting to your GM.
Right.
That's a little bit weird.
Right.
But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what he winds up doing.
Go ahead, James.
I just think this is another, what the fuck, pickup signing compared to what the firing Wink and bring in another guy. You're like, why is this? I absolutely think this is it's not what you know, who you know, because this guy, his track record is not that great. And he was also...
Oh, it's a boys club?
Yeah, he was also part of the Washington Wizards. He was the chief planning and operation officer. Right. And his stint there was a couple years. Everywhere it's a couple years. And, like, where he's been, none of those teams had been successful. Jacksonville, Cleveland, Washington.
But again, this is what I'm trying to say. Like the role that he had within these organizations is going to be vastly different than what he's in charge of here with the Ravens.
You don't think chief planning and operation officer is about the same as president of...
I mean, a lot of that is, but I mean, again, what you're comparing with what he did with the Wizards, there wasn't anything wrong with what he did with the Wizards. The only thing that you hear negative about with Sashi Brown is the decisions that he made from a GM's perspective, which he's going to have no control over that. Will he have? I'm sure he'll be part
influence.
of the. Yeah, it will be part of the influence, be part of the council on it.
Now that'd be funny at the draft. Like, hey, I think we should get it. EDC's like, just stay over there.
Stay in the corner, please.
Right.
I just roll.
Listen, I trust Steve Bisciotti. Steve Bisciotti's a great businessman, and if he thinks that he's the right fit for this role, who am I to say he's not? And I don't think that this is it's a boys club and this guy knew this guy, so we're going to bring him in. I don't think that's what this is in this type of position. You don't put a person of that kind of power in that type of position based off of a boys club type move.
You also need someone expendable to negotiate with Lamar, because if he gets pissed off on negotiations, just cut the head and have somebody else talk to him tomorrow.
We'll get into the negotiations in a little bit. But I think, I guess the one thing I can see, and I'm straddling the fence on this because I can see both sides, because I think this guy, he's shown, usually when you're in situations like this, he's bouncing around, right? And people think about bouncing around, and we look at this organization and we look at longevity.
Yeah. Because
the guys up top have had longevity, right? This is a guy that when you look at his track record, it's not longevity.
He's 45 years old.
Right, but what we don't know, and what I would assume, I don't think he has truly ever actually been fired from any role. He's usually been poached from different places, right? And that's a sign of somebody that is used or viewed as being valuable. If I'm poaching you, I've had that happen to me at jobs before. Somebody I know what you do well at this. Let me grab you, right? Come with me. I can get you to another level, right? That type of thing. And so you kind of think that could be happening, but then you do kind of step back and you kind of say, well, wait a second, this is going against the grain. And when you combine it with some of the other moves that have happened, it makes you start kind of scratching your head a little bit. It's like, okay, I really want to see where all this is going, because it almost seems like a shift that's happening.
And I'm sure we'll get a press conference from him. We'll be able to ask him questions, what his role was described to him, and we'll see what those answers are. But like I said, I trust Steve Bisciotti. He's never really let us down from a personnel standpoint.
No.
I mean, the Ravens are regarded as one of the best ran organizations, in all the NFL and really in all professional sports. So I trust his business decisions with that. So we'll see. We'll dive more into this as we get more information and we hear more from him.
Guy didn't make the money that he did making bad decisions.
Right, exactly. But so we talked about over the last couple of weeks, obviously Wink Martindale moving on, the new defensive coordinator, new old defensive coordinator coming back in McDonald, right? Wink sounds like it's going to be in line for taking the New York Giants defensive coordinator position, and going to be taking a few older guys that are no longer with the Ravens anymore.
Other guys that were let loose.
Right, along with him to New York. But there have been, a few position groups still open for jobs, and we were wondering what way the Ravens were going to go. Rob Ryan was shit canned over the last few days. That was a move I kind of thought was going to happen, because Rob was brought in as one of Wink's boys. Like, him and Wink went back for years, and they were friends and all that stuff. And I'm sure Rob was probably a little bitter over what happened to Wink if he was forced out. We don't really know what the backdoor conversations were. But at the end of the day, it was a mutual agreement of parting ways.
Again, we'll get into that in a few minutes.
Whatever that is. I don't know. This one, to me, I thought was probably going to happen.
I thought it was gonna happen, but it was a little bit of a head scratcher to me because it wasn't clear if he played a role in the move that happened with Patrick Queen and moving him into that other linebacker spot and putting him in a position to perform better. Right? And we never got whose idea that was, because the two guys that you would immediately draw your eye to in Rob and Wink, you've let go. So it makes me question. That's why I said it's interesting the way that this organization is going and what they're bringing in and what they're getting rid of, because they're getting rid of some of the old heads, and maybe they weren't willing to get into the analytics, right? The game, we know Harbaugh's an analytic guy. Maybe they weren't embracing that. Who knows? But I did see some changes this year and some adjustments that would make you think, well, wait a second, is it all all bad?
I think the Ravens, regardless of who was the coach at that point, with the way Patrick Queen was going, they needed to make a change. And that was going to happen regardless of who made that final decision to push him outside, to the will. But here's the thing. What have we talked about all year long that was wrong with this defense? It was tackling, right? And most of your tackling happens from your linebacker positions. I mean, we dealt with however long Ray Lewis played, and he led the league, led the team in tackles every year, and that was an issue. We were all of these big plays. It's just from guys not wrapping up and stuff. It's across the board with the entire defense. It's not just the linebacker core. But when you bring in a guy off the streets like a Josh Bynes, and he comes in and is a star in tackling compared to everybody else that's been in the fold
before he got hurt.
Right. You bring in these kind of guys that just outshine first-round draft picks and all that comes back on coaching. So, again, this was a move, and the tie to Wink, that wasn't a surprise to me. But, again, all moves that you make only make sense if the replacement is the right guy. And I think the Ravens knocked it out of the park with this. Bringing back Zach Orr to be their linebackers coach moving forward. Obviously, Zach was a great linebacker for us for the little bit of time that he played. Unfortunately, had the neck injury that ended his career. Was probably going to be a perennial Pro Bowler, all-pro type linebacker. He was on that kind of trajectory. He was super young. 29 years old now. He played for those 3 years. He left last year to be the Jaguars' outside linebacker coach.
Yeah, he was a defensive analyst for us prior to that.
Right.
From 2017 to 2020.
Right. So he comes back, and we talk about getting that fresh blood in, the younger transition in some of these coaches. This is a guy I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the relatability, right, of coaches.
Yep.
It's a dangerous and fine line to walk, right? When you're too relatable, sometimes you can be blind to the things that need to happen. So hopefully some of these young guys coming in don't have that issue and are able to kind of step up and say, look, I'm making the decision in this, I'm doing that. So I hope it works. I definitely think he brings a lot of knowledge to the table and can really help the team long term, especially because if you were an analyst, you were sitting back and you were probably in the film room a lot, looking at some of this stuff, giving your input, giving your take. They probably like what they saw. He got the Jaguars offer. They said, go ahead. And the second that they had the chance to bring him back, they wanted him back.
Yeah.
Who knows what role he played in that 2021 season. 2020 season when he was the Ravens defensive analyst before he went out there. But yeah, interesting move. I'm excited.
Yeah,
in a sense, but
I was sad to see him go. I was sad to see him go in the beginning. I mean, he was basically like an intern as an analyst, defensive analyst with us. So his first opportunity to actually coach was with the Jaguars. But this goes back to what I was saying earlier about how the Ravens are just so well respected as an organization and how they're run that guys that leave want to come back so quickly. Mike McDonald goes to the college game in Michigan and has all the success that he has in Michigan in his first year, and he's getting all this high praise, and then he comes back to Baltimore as soon as the defensive coordinator position opens. Zach Orr leaves for 1 year, goes to the Jaguars, proves that he can be a coach and that builds a rapport with his players, comes back, as a linebacker coach for the Ravens. So this, again, just speaks volumes, I think, to the Ravens and how they're run organizationally.
Yeah, I think it when you look at it that way, you want to say that, yeah, they're bringing guys that know the organization. But I will say this. Sometimes it is good and smart to bring in someone with outside perspective, someone that's never seen the inside of the organization before.
But to that point, though, you got a guy like Mike McDonald who leaves and goes and works with a completely different coaching
for a
staff.
year. That's not experience.
It is experience. a coach at that level, you've already built up your basis of what you are as a coach, right? When you get out, you're basically a sponge at this point. You're absorbing new techniques, new schemes, new things from different perspectives, and then you kind of build that. Your philosophy just develops over time. And I think just even if it is only for a year, leaving and getting that experience on a collegiate level, very different. But it does help him grow as a coach. And same thing with Zach Orr. Goes down and works with another staff for an entire year, learns what works and what doesn't work there, and brings it here to be a better coach. I think in the long term, I think it's smart.
But I guess my statement, going back to my statement for a second, right? Yeah. Bringing people from the outside. Both those guys were gone for a year. Mm-hmm. High likelihood, if you're used to doing something a certain way for 3, 4, 5 years, as both of those guys that you just mentioned did,
right?
You can go out and you can learn something for a year, but if you come back in the same type of set and the same type of mindset, same type of organization that has the same type of mindset, it's a high likelihood you're going to fall back into some of those patterns,
right?
Good or bad. And that's my thing is I'm not saying there's anything wrong with either of these. My thing is just sometimes a fresh outside perspective is a good thing to have, which I don't necessarily know that we have right now on this staff.
So Ryan kind of rolled his eyes and then shook his head. I don't know which way he's feeling. What do you got?
I just think it depends on where you're getting this from. I mean, if you're getting just from a run-of-the-mill organization, sure, but we can all look and see the Nick Saban rehab for dilapidated coaches program he has down there, where he takes care of everybody and their brother and makes them for them, either whether it's a PR thing or you failed miserably. Look at Loxley coming from his Houston failures and going down there and learning what's going on. I mean, if you learn from the best, you're going to learn quickly. Now, whether that be Saban, whether that be, McVay, we see everyone and that touches him gets a new job. If it is a different level, you will absorb it and you'll recognize the difference.
That's exactly right. That's basically where I was going with the whole thing. So that does still leave the Ravens with a couple of position groups open. The outside linebacker spot is open. Tight end coaching position is still open. So the Ravens still have some work to do to round out their staff. Special teams coordinator, former special teams coordinator, Jerry Rosberg, who ended up walking away, and Chris Horton was then, promoted to the special teams, promoted to special teams coordinator, and actually this year was named the best special teams coordinator in the NFL. But it sounds like Jerry Rosberg's not done. He wants to come back into the NFL, so he's exploring his options. I can think of one team in a real cold state who looked like shit in the playoffs and all year on special teams that could really use a Jerry Rosberg in Green Bay. Green Bay special teams was god-awful, so if they need to hire somebody, Jerry Rosberg should be the guy.
I thought you were going to go with the Terps.
I could go that way, too.
They took care of it in the bowl game. That's all that matters.
Yeah, that's true.
One game does not a team make, all right?
Yeah.
Apparently, he still gets to survive.
Terps don't have the money to bring Jerry Rosberg in. We'll see what happens with him, but I think there's a lot of NFL teams out there. Because, again, Chris Horton basically was under the tutelage of Rosberg for years, and now he's the coach of the year. So a guy like that is going to be highly valuable to a team that values special teams, and to get like an organization like Green Bay who sees their entire season fall apart due to special teams could really value Jerry.
Yeah, there's a few teams throughout the league that would probably be looking at him. All right, let's shift gears.
Yeah.
Let's go to what we're not going to really talk about the McDonald press conference that was supposed to happen last Tuesday. Didn't happen till Wednesday. Basic introductory kind of press conference.
Groundbreaking about it.
Yeah, nothing new. Him just talking about his experience again. From my perspective, I don't know how much again you're learning in the year. That's just me. But at the same time, we did see the EDC press conference on Friday.
This is the one I think we were all waiting for.
This is the one I was waiting for. A lot of excitement, a lot of good things. We'll wait to save the disappointment part till last, because there was something that I was disappointed on. I'm really curious to get all of your takes on it. But before we do, let's get into the big question that was like the first thing addressed.
Yeah.
And that was the contract status with Lamar and the relationship with Lamar.
Yeah, so, obviously up until this press conference, everything that we've heard when Lamar's contract's gotten brought up is that it was basically a formality, that it was just a matter of when, not if, right?
Yeah.
Well, in his press conference, it was a little bit of a change of tune. Talked with him. He said he talked with Lamar about 5 or 6 different times throughout the course of the last year, but they're going to be moving at quote unquote Lamar's pace from here on out. I didn't know how to kind of take that. To me, that sounded like the story that Qadre Ishmael released with him saying on the Twitter space that
they made an offer.
They made an offer, generational wealth. He turned it down. Now the ball's in Lamar's court. It's how I took that. Now I processed it. That was the PC way of EDC basically saying that.
Yeah, I kind of saw the same thing, right? It came down to, when you're looking at it, and I said this before, I think Lamar, A, he still feels like he has something to prove, but B, I think he's waiting to see, what do you do to protect me, right? That's when you're saying, okay, the ball's in Lamar's court, we're moving at his pace. I think he's kind of waiting to see, what are you going to do? He's waiting to see and say, all right, what are you going to do for me in the draft? Are you going to give me protection? He knows he's got decent weapons at the wide receiver core. He's got the best tight end in the league, right? It's one of those things that there's something more to the story that obviously we're not going to hear about, but clearly, like you said, they have talked enough that EDC is kind of saying, your turn to give us the counter, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that could come from this. We've always said, or I've always said, Lamar is about Lamar, and Lamar is about his money, right? That's why, again, I've said it a million times. That's why he's got his own clothing line. That's why he is his own agent, all of those things, because he's about his own money. And maybe he is taking the Joe Flacco approach, right, and betting on himself in his final year, because if you're betting off of what he did this past year, yeah, you can paint a pretty picture because, they were 8-3 before the injury, and then they went 0-6 after the injury, right? You can paint that picture. You can look at even the statistics outside of the interceptions. Look at the
he was on a great
pace for passing yards, the pace for rushing yards, all were there. The increase was obviously in his interceptions. But again, then you can paint the picture of, he didn't have his offensive line out there, and we had all these
he didn't have the
injuries.
protection. Yeah, he didn't have his running backs. Right, you have all those things.
But when you think of how dynamic this offense could be on paper, when fully healthy, a fully healthy Ronnie Stanley, another year under Ben Cleveland as a rookie last year, now he's a vet. Depending upon what they do with the center position, if they bring back Brosman, and then you've got a year of work with Bateman, right, in the fold. You've got Hollywood playing in a contract year. You got Mark Andrews.
Just came off a 1,000-yard season, by the way.
Mark Andrews, who just broke every receiving record for the Ravens, right? And then you get your two-headed beast in the backfield back in Dobbins and Edwards. To Lamar, if I'm Lamar, I'm seeing bright lights. I'm seeing big numbers.
All he's looking at is if you imagine all the bright lights, he's looking at those two dark spots on the stage going, well, how are you going to fill those dark spots?
And the other way you got to think about this too, right, is we're going to see the cap number increase, right? And
208, I think, was the last number.
When you base a contract, especially a top-tier contract, like a top 5 contract at a position, you pay that based on who the top 5 are that are paid at that position currently. You also pay that on percentage of cap space. If the quarterback position is valued for a top 5 player at 22% of your cap per year,
it's a little higher than that,
I'm just saying, whatever it is, whatever that number is, just throwing a number out there, that number then increases as the cap increases with it. So this could be a situation where he's betting on himself.
Yeah. One other thing that I did take away from that is something that was kind of it seemed, the way that EDC was talking about it seemed like a misnomer that we it's still not fully clear, but the way that EDC was talking, it was as if we've all interpreted it that Lamar's mom is involved, heavily on these contract talks. He kept saying, I've talked with Lamar. Not with his mom.
I think his mom is part of his counsel. I think Lamar goes back to his mom and says, hey, Mom, this is what happened. This is what
she's sitting there on the phone with them if they're talking on the phone. Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
But he's talking to Lamar directly.
Yeah, and that's one of the things he said was, it's weird dealing with a player directly, right? And he's also, from his perspective, you got to think about that, right? He can talk to the agent anytime he wants. You got to watch and not get into your quarterback's head, especially this is your generational talent guy that you're wanting to franchise and have him be your franchise quarterback. You don't go in the middle of the season and start talking to him and talking money if he's doing well. Right. Those 5, we don't know when those 5-6 conversations happened, but if those 5-6 conversations happened 4 before the season started and 2 after he got hurt, that's all that happened. You're not talking to him during that time period that he's leading this team to wins.
Right.
I'm not screwing with anything in his mindset if I'm him. unless Lamar approaches me.
Right.
So that's one of the things I thought was interesting to hear was there's this misnomer that his mom is so involved, and I think it was good for him to kind of get that out, that it's really him and Lamar having the conversation. Lamar may be taking that back to his mother, but it's really him and Lamar.
No, that's very true. So with all this said, right, I want to get a refresh on where we all stand individually with Lamar and the potential of this upcoming contract, right? Because there's a few of us in this room who value him a little bit more than others. So I want to get a recap. I want to see if we all kind of still are on the same side. Do we feel worse about it? Do we feel better about it? I'll start with you, Scott. How do you feel with Lamar's contract? Do you think if the number is $40+ million a year, are you paying that to Lamar?
Yes.
Based off of what you've seen and based off of what you think he can do for the next 5 years. Let's say it's a 5-year, $40+ million a year contract.
So what is the franchise tag number in this imaginary thing? Like, would it be 37? Would it be 35? What is the franchise tag?
Yeah,
number?
let's say it is 35. Let's say it's $35 million.
And you're going to pay him 40.
And we're going to pay him $40 to $42 million a year for the next 5 years.
I'm going to go Moneyball. Your job is not to get, it's ultimately to get wins, but how do you get wins? You buy touchdowns. How do you buy touchdowns? You pay for the guy that is driving your team and gives you 8 wins, and he doesn't get there, and all of a sudden you don't have any more wins.
Right.
That's what you do. In a sense, he did prove his wealth or prove his value, right? Because he drives team. When he's on the field, he changes the mentality on the field.
Yep.
On defense and offense, right? It's an overall mindset, and that's the part, the intangible, that's invaluable.
Yep.
And I think it's worth it. I'd be willing. You start getting over 45, it's kind of pushing it to me, but I might say
$40 to $42 million is where I think he'll land, where I think he should be paid. That's why I'm saying, are you comfortable with being paid? I'm paying him that.
I'm comfortable with it, knowing that the cap's going up and knowing what he has brought to the table and what he's gonna be able to do. Yeah, I'm comfortable with it.
Ryan, same situation.
I think that he wants to be the highest paid quarterback, period.
That could be.
Now, if he wants the highest guaranteed money, maybe I could play that game. But if he wants the highest per capita year, then I'm playing I don't want to take a page out of the Redskins book, but it's what they did. Kirk Cousins. He's on a 3-year deal right now. He's not on a 1-year deal. They can keep him twice. They can franchise tag him 2 years in a row. So we have 3 years. I'm not paying you $10 million more than I could pay you already. Like, I already have you under contract for 3 years. So I would pay him if it is 35, 42, 42, sure. But I'm not paying you $45 million when I could pay you $35 million. It just doesn't make any sense. We could talk about those huge numbers when we're done franchising you twice.
Even though you run the risk of pissing him off, you run the risk of pissing him off.
You run the risk of him sitting out. I mean, whatever like the case may be, and then you're without a legitimate starting quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I would offer him those franchise numbers already ahead of time. Guarantee all that money, fine. And that would be your.
So you would offer him. You would say you would offer him like
$45 million a year starting right now. Like, why would that's basically giving away $30 million? Like, what? It doesn't really change all that much.
All right, what do we got, James? How do you feel about Lamar and the contract?
I'm not paying him $40+ million a year. I'm sorry.
I think it'll get there, but not now.
I just don't see it. You guys are impressed by it. He had 8 wins with him and then without. I'm sorry. I think Huntley could have got a win against the Lions. He could have got a win against the Vikings. I think he could have got a win against the Dolphins. I think he could have got a win against the Bears.
Based on what?
Because they were
I'm
failed
sorry,
2-point conversions.
Lamar. When Lamar was out, he missed a tough schedule. He didn't have to play the Packers. He didn't play the Rams. He didn't play the Steelers. And he missed the Browns game, which the Browns won. So I'm just saying, like, his first 8 games, he lost to the Raiders. Should have won. He won with the Chiefs by 1 point. It could have went either way. He barely beat the Lions.
Shouldn't have won that game. Clyde Edwards gave that away.
I'm sorry, drop balls. It plays on it. But that could be Huntley throwing the ball, too, and drop balls. Nothing impressed me with Lamar did for 8 games. I think our
nothing
backup
impressed you. How many comeback wins
right.
did they have? The Colts, the Chiefs, like all against big time teams.
My thing is,
without half his offensive line.
EDC, I'm looking at him and say, hey, I'll pay you $40 million a year. I pay you 38. You're going to get more money on it. What's it called? Sponsors and endorsement deals. You'll make money. You want to win Super Bowls?
That's not how it works.
I know it doesn't work. If you want to make a lot of money, sure. Play out your season. Go play for the Lions. Get paid then. Get paid for Jacksonville.
And that might be the case.
But the thing is, take less.
But the
just
Ravens
a little
have
bit
no
less.
emergency
Hold on.
plan.
Take a little bit less. Get your weapons that you want, your offensive line. Make your money off the field by how much you put on the field, and you'll get your money.
How
If
weird
not,
is it, though, that he makes no national money in sponsorships? Like,
well, he does. He has Oakley.
He's
got Oakley.
yeah.
Where do you see him on TV?
I'm
I
pretty
see
sure
lots of quarterbacks on TV. I don't see him on TV.
I'm pretty sure
and
he's
he's the
probably
number
was-
one selling
He was
jersey.
on Oakley. He was on Bose.
Yeah, I think
he
he's
was on a couple of national
I think
ones.
he probably gets some car dealerships in Florida where he's at.
Here's the thing. I mean, just
I'm sorry.
I got in the same
he had to
debate.
impress me throwing the ball to pay him top dollars like Josh Allen. Josh Allen can run, but he can throw that ball where he needs to go. Lamar, yeah, he can
Okay,
throw
but
the
you're
ball.
not going to find a Josh Allen tomorrow. Like that's unrealistic.
Josh Allen doesn't grow on trees.
Right.
And I'm fine with Huntley being the backup
Oh, God.
or even
The
the
backup
starter.
or
The
the
backup
starter.
or the starter.
Or even the starter.
He
Cool
was
to be the
0
backup,
6
for sure.
He was 0 6 with the same squad that Lamar went 8-3 with. This
Yeah,
is my
but look-
point.
look at
this is
who
my
did
point.
he-
Hold on.
look who he played.
I got in the same damn debate with somebody online about this. This is why I wanted to bring this up. The dude is 41-17 as a starter. They went 0 6 after he went down, 8-3 before he went down with the same makeshift offensive line with the same playmaking players
played
out
the
there.
same teams,
no
though.
running backs out there. Doesn't matter. He beat the Chiefs. He beat the Colts. He beat a few other teams in there pretty impressively and murdered the Chargers, slaughtered the Chargers.
And there's a couple teams that slaughtered the Chargers too.
Well, they made the playoffs. Well, anyway, here's the thing. He's a MVP. He's an all-pro player, 2-time Pro Bowler, 2-time top 10 leading rusher, 2 top 10 total touchdown leader, 91.8.
That's great.
Hold on, 91.8 quarterback rating, which is higher than Josh Allen.
That's great, but let's.
Wins over 75%
I don't
of
care
his
what
games.
he did in the past. Tell me what he did this year.
Oh
Well,
my God!
that's
He
silly.
was
This year
8-3, and you cannot base anything on what this year is.
a little random
And
this
that's
year.
great. Play
Yeah.
your fifth year. Let me see what you can do. But go back and tell me what his
Goog
record
says
is
youngest
in
ever
our
MVP.
division. In our division, what's
What's
his
Tyler
record?
Huntley's record in our division? He lost all the games that he played in our division. That's an asinine statement.
This is the thing. If the
Look
Ravens
at-
had
Look at what Tyler Huntley did.
Okay.
Tyler Huntley did nothing.
All right, jumping up and down, but he can't beat the Steelers. Lamar can't beat the Steelers. He can't beat the Browns all the
Well,
time.
the Steelers
you
are-
should be able to.
This is
he
my
didn't
problem.
beat the Bengals this year.
This is my problem with this conversation is that the Madden creative player doesn't exist in real life, right? So these players
I don't
aren't
play
fucking
Madden.
growing.
I'm not
These
12
players
anymore.
aren't growing on trees. You can't just say, well, Lamar isn't the number one best quarterback in
I'm
the
not
league,
worried about
so we're
that.
ready to not pay him
This
$40
is a
million
team game.
and find a
It's a
team
team
game,
game.
not when it comes to fucking
a cap
quarterbacks.
game.
Joe Burrow just took a 2-win team to the fucking Super Bowl.
With
That's
no
not-
offensive line.
That's right.
No offensive line.
Right.
I can get loud too in my
But
hands
it's not
too.
a team fucking game if
He
it's
had
one
no
player.
offensive line. Lamar
the
had
quarterback.
somebody offensive line. He couldn't do
The
anything.
quarterback drove them
Lamar
to
could
the
run.
fucking Super
He
Bowl.
also had a running back that could run.
We had a
In
running back
Lamar's-
too.
In Lamar's first year, do you not remember? As a rookie, Joe Flacco took us where? We weren't even in the playoff consideration. By the end of that year, when Lamar took over, where were we? We were in the playoffs. Like, Lamar is
And
a
what did he
difference
do?
maker. He is a difference
figured
maker.
him out.
I understand the argument as far as the playoffs. They figured him out.
Yeah,
The next
'cause
fucking
Greg
year, he
Roman-
won MVP.
I'm talking about
What
Greg
are we
Ro-
talking about?
I'm talking about Greg Roman's offense is
Oh
so
my
amazing.
God. Greg Roman's offense is so amazing that he won MVP with a shit offense. What's that tell you about Lamar? Get an offensive coordinator in there. You're barking up the wrong fucking
I don't
tree.
know about that. They don't want to.
Jesus Christ.
They don't want to get an offensive
Your
coordinator.
problem isn't with Lamar. Your problem is with Greg
I just
Roman.
got to point out, his face is now as red as his
Jesus
shirt.
Christ.
Thank God we're not using a red screen.
Man.
He just disappeared.
I've just got tired of what happened when we paid Joe, and this is what's going to happen. You guys get all excited about this quarterback because he's something that we never had. He's exciting on the field, but he can't throw the fucking ball.
Oh my God. Here we
No,
go.
he can
Jesus
throw it.
Christ.
Oh, he could throw it, but catching the ball is one thing. I'm just saying, like, it's not worth paying him top dollar, and that's what's going to happen.
I don't know why you asked this question, Fred.
I had to get the pot stirred.
No, but there's a
I knew that this is how it was going to go.
But there's a reason why he hasn't got fucking paid. There's a reason why from both sides.
It's not a reason why.
Because he wants $50 million a year, probably. It's
and if
probably
that's the case,
whatever the number is. So
if that's the
we're
case,
gonna have to find out.
That's a different conversation. That's a different conversation. I'm still not worried about whether this deal is going to get done or not. I mean, the only way I don't see a deal like this getting done is if Lamar does bet on himself and he goes out there and fucking falls flat on his face, which I just don't see happening under a healthy team, healthy offensive line, healthy weapons at the running back.
We all want healthy.
I don't think that happens, but we'll see.
What if this dude just wants the free agency frenzy? What if he just wants to be like that college recruit that everybody gets to throw out their best offer? He might decide to play through both franchise tags and see what the hell number is going to be thrown up on this wall, because it could go nuts.
Maybe.
Who knows?
By the way, just the way that Lamar was on pace, right? For when you look at, he had 11 games, 2,800 yards. If he would have been on pace and been able to play in all of those games.
I'm not a realist. I'm a realist. I don't go like, oh, what happened if he played? He didn't fucking play because he can't stay healthy.
Oh,
he can't stay healthy.
Yeah, a bone bruise. Come on, dude.
Oh my God.
I mean,
you guys are laughing now. I hope he gets
Young couldn't stay healthy.
I can't wait.
Deshaun Elliott can't stay healthy.
I hope this guy
Lamar
gets paid,
Jackson.
Dude. I hope he gets paid. And when
he's
numbers
got a lot
are
of
out,
illnesses.
it's all coming back, dude.
All right. So
save this episode. It's coming, dude.
We got to
Press
get
the
back.
record button. Don't worry about
Let's
it.
get back to the Eric DeCosta press conference and the
got so way off
takeaways.
topic.
Jesus Christ.
We got a guest coming on for
I know.
show and tell. We got to make sure
We
we
got to
stop
clean
this in.
shit up around here. We already talked about the importance of offensive line, but that was absolutely something that was a point of emphasis in Eric DeCosta's press conference. Said basically the same thing last year, that they needed to do a whole lot to address the offensive line. They went it out and added Kevin Zeitler, who I think had a great year in his first year with the Ravens. Unsung hero. You don't hear his name, and that's usually a good thing when it comes from the guard position, right? Villanueva was a backup plan and unfortunately forced into a starting role that absolutely failed. Ben Cleveland, I think we all had high hopes for him just based on his stature and his size and all that stuff, but he was a project.
He's made some adjustments.
He got better as the season went on, but he was another one dealing with injuries throughout the year and whatnot. And then, that move allowed Bradley Bozeman to go back to his natural position at center, which has been almost to our detriment, because now I think he's played his way out of Baltimore because he did so well at center. So the importance of offensive line and protecting Lamar is obviously a known point of contention.
And it's a priority for them, too.
It is. It's absolutely a priority. And you got to think, Ronnie Stanley is no guarantee to come back. And even in Eric's press conference,
he's hopeful.
He's hopeful, but I didn't feel good about it. Like just the verbiage that he used, optimistic he'll be back and playing at a hot level, but not banking on it type thing. I don't want to make the same mistake as I made last year by thinking that he's going to be ready for the start of the year and all that. To me, that sounds pessimistic more than optimistic.
Retire him out of your heads.
And then, him also bringing up, when they talked about it, he basically said his goal this year on that offensive line is to add not two pieces, but two significant pieces.
Yeah, you want two starting pieces. You know you're going to be losing your starting center. So you're either going to be adding that through free agency or adding that through the draft. I think Tristan Colon could do the job
serviceable.
if needable. Yeah, he's serviceable, but he's not the guy that I want out there. He's
not your long-term answer.
He's a downgrade, significant downgrade from Bozeman.
Yeah.
But the Ravens do have a potential center in Lindenbaum on the board, potentially at 14, so maybe they'll go there at the top of the draft. We'll see. But we all know that Lamar's success goes along with the protection that he has. There was a stark difference between his comfort and his relaxed, I don't even know the words, just his ability to just calm down in the pocket and make his reads and go through his progressions. You saw that in 2019 when he won the MVP, and that was the biggest difference in 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, it was a big difference. And one of the guys that made the change, right, is Marquise Brown, right? And he was asked about that.
I'm all for bringing Jensen back. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I said that before, by the way.
It's the only redhead I like.
But Marquise Brown, he was asked about that, and the question was, will the Ravens pick up the fifth-year option? Without freaking hesitation, he was like, yes.
Yep.
And he just sat there, and they were like, Okay, he's like, yeah, I love what Marquise has done. They are going to pick up his option. They love what the work that he's put in. Picking up the option is going to put him just under 13, which is pretty significant, right? That's a decent
chunk of change,
that's a decent amount of money.
Which makes this not a contract year for him then, right? Because we would have him for 2023.
This is his final year.
This is his. They're picking up his fifth.
This is his fifth year.
No.
You're
He's
picking
right.
up before the fourth
This
year.
is his fourth year. They're picking up his fifth year before the fourth year.
That's because that's what they had to do with Baker last year. They have to decide before the fourth year whether they're picking up the fifth year option.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes,
So he's
right.
on.
He's got this year, and then the
And
following
next.
year they'll have him. But the thing is with this, and Eric admitted to it, that there's a little bit of a little bit of what's the word that I'm looking for. Nostalgia a little bit when I say that. That's a loose word to use, but this was DaCosta's first draft pick as GM.
Yeah.
So it's a place that's near and dear to his heart. Had his best season of his career so far, 91 catches, just like we said, just over 1,000 yards, 1,008 yards, 6 TDs in 16 games. That's a little low.
Here's the thing with Hollywood, though, and he has been very up and down roller coaster throughout his
Drew
career.
calls him a Riddler.
Yeah, right. I mean, he still struggled early on in the year with drop after drop, and that has been a problem through his entire career so far. And then, the big play element of his game, that you saw early on in the year.
You mean that we saw the first game of his career when he went up against the Dolphins?
I'm saying when we
game.
saw, Lamar at quarterback. Not somebody else. Those big plays went away at the latter half of the year. So that's my only hesitation. So you want to get in a debate about a contract? I'll get into a debate with you about Hollywood, whether he's worth the money or not. Because I just don't think he is. But
1,000-yard receiver. You don't think he's worth the money?
He wouldn't have made 1,000 yards in a normal 16-game season. Like he got that
Fair
extra
enough.
yardage and stuff. I mean, he was on a great pace with that first 8 or 9 games of the
Fair
season,
enough.
first half of the season.
Well,
but then he just
and
dropped
considering that to that same point, right, he didn't have a touchdown in his final 9 games.
That's my point.
Right? So it definitely plays a role.
Go ahead, Ryan.
The good argument that I heard for Hollywood, because I would agreed on the surface with you that number for him seems like too much in my head. But what I was hearing on 105.7, I can't remember who said it, is that because they have so little money invested in all their other very young wide receivers, the amount of money that you would spend on the wide receiver core is still fine lumping that in there.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like averaging out over all these cheap contracts. So it's just easier to know you're picking up that year, not have to draft a wide receiver at all for the next year or two.
No, I get
knowing that he's locked up. And even though you're kind of overpaying for him, the group is still under budget.
Statistically, though, when you look at the contract that he's getting with this 5th-year option, he's right on par for his performance versus what his pay is for a wide receiver. It's just I'm talking about contract beyond that.
Yeah,
if you're
I don't think
talking
I would do
about
that
an
unless
extension,
it gets you Lamar.
yeah. If it's a bargaining chip, if Lamar says yes or no, I'm coming if he doesn't come, or I'm not coming if he doesn't come, then yeah, you make that deal. But on the defensive side of the ball, the one guy that I really wanted to hear him talk about, and I wasn't sure because we had been back and forth on this thing, was Marcus Peters.
Yeah.
Right? I love Marcus Peters, and we talked about this for weeks. There's a lot that he brings to the table, and one of the elements that missed sorely from this defense was turnovers last year, and that's what he is. He's a turnover machine. We know he's boom or bust, but he is a turnover machine.
Well, you're not the only one that loves him.
Yeah. EDC apparently loves him. He said it in his quote, "I love Marcus. I talk with Marcus quite a bit. He's one of those guys who, when he comes to your organization, he provides such an authentic perspective to what this game is all about. He's a Raven. I would expect Marcus to be here." And that's reassuring because, again, this is a guy who's going to count $15.5 million against the cap next year. And if they're going to be robbing Peter to pay Paul to try to keep guys around, this was a contract that I thought either A, would be cut, traded, or B, they would do an extension to try to loosen the cap number.
And I think that before you do that, I think I hope that they do, right? I hope that they're smart about this in the sense that, Marcus is 29. Yeah. Right, he's not old, but he's getting up there, and he's coming off a knee injury for a cornerback. Right. It's not always an easy thing, especially when it's an ACL. Right, so that's one of those things that you have to kind of take a step back and make sure that is this value there? Does he bounce back? Can you get it? Is he looking good in training camp? What does your rehab team think he's doing? Is he going to be back? We've seen them pull people forward too quickly before.
Right.
You can't do the same thing with somebody that you're spending $15 million a year on.
Right, and that $15 million makes him the 4th highest projected number on the team. cutting him would create about $10 million of space. That's why I said that's an option. I don't think it's a realistic option. Obviously, Eric DeCosta seems to want him back here. But, again, money talks when push comes to shove and they start making these deals. So we'll see.
Speaking of defense, I want to get y'all's take on this because I was extremely disappointed in the Baltimore media during this press conference. Extremely disappointed.
Why is that?
Roman nor Wink were brought up to ask EDC his perspective on this. He's building a team, right? I think about the Moneyball, the movie, right? Brad Pitt built a team. If the coach isn't playing the team how it's designed to be built, there's a problem, right? That's what I'm sitting here going, was that the issue? Were they not playing the way that EDC was wanting to build the team? Or was there a disagreement because they're looking and going, look, why am I going to change course? Why am I going to fix what's not broken? The previous 2 years compared to this year, this was a #1 defense.
I can see why you'd be upset with it, but I think probably what happened was he probably came into the press conference and told the media, like, listen, Wink, Roman, off topic, we've already talked about it. Harbaugh already addressed it 3 days ago in the meeting, and I stand behind everything that Harbaugh said, type of thing. We don't need to go down that road. Keep all your questions to like contract type stuff. Who knows? That type of thing could have transpired because I thought it was a little weird that it didn't get brought up at least by one person, especially Roman, just because that's what the fan base wants
Jerry
to hear.
Coleman.
Right, right.
That was the one person I'm going, if anybody asks. Or the other one that I said that I was disappointed.
I think he's on thin ice. He's going to lose his credentials here shortly.
Yeah, right, exactly. But the other one, I was like, I could get it. Like, Bobby's not trying to cross that road if that happened, right? Or create that. But I was a little disappointed that he didn't at least acknowledge it for the fans to hear, right? Even if it's, hey, guys, we obviously made some moves from our coaching standpoint. We're going to continue to assess that. We're looking at
just a general statement, nothing.
The only thing that he said in that type of aspect was that they were, when it was in reference to the injuries, that they're looking at the training staff. And it's like, wait a second, you're saying something about the training staff and looking at the training staff and it's basically saying, like, we're assessing if the training staff are the right people, if our doctors are the right people. Like, he made that statement, but you said nothing about Wink and Roman?
Right.
Like, I guess that's why I said baffled my mind.
I just can't believe not one person in the media didn't think to ask about it. I think they were preempted to not ask about it because
possibly
Harbaugh had already put a statement out, but we'll see. We got to talk a little bit about the Pro Bowl. Not that anybody gives a shit about the Pro Bowl. And, we always talk, like, every year just how, like, ridiculous the game is.
Can we just play flag football at this point?
That's what I'm saying. But I still turn it on, and I'm so disappointed every time I watch it. I'm like, God, this is awful.
There were, like, 3 times that Mac Jones should have been sacked.
I used to watch the Pro Bowl. I'm talking 20-something years ago, and back then I used to think the Pro Bowl was trash. But you go back and you watch highlights of Pro Bowls from 20 years ago, you're like, Jesus Christ, this is like a real NFL game compared to what it is now.
Even Deion Sanders said that this week.
Really? 20 years ago. I just saw highlights from 2018, and they're like knocking the living crap out of each other. I think what happened is this like self-fulfilling prophecy. The fans kept talking trash about the Pro Bowl to the point where the players are like, well, nobody cares about this game. Let's just not play. And they're like out there playing literally. But how did they tell the refs, we're going to play 2-hand touch? Like, blow the whistle when I touch his back.
Yeah, that's exactly what they were.
How did they get cooperation with the officials?
But I've watched a lot of these. I've watched a lot of these like celebrity games, like the celebrity flag football games, and even they're fucking entertaining. The Ravens will do them at halftime. They'll bring back some of the old players,
the high school
and some of the military.
Like
no. I'm talking about flag football. They'll bring back some of the old Ravens out there. They'll bring some of the military people in. They'll mix them together and play flag football at halftime. And even that's more entertaining than what I saw in the Pro Bowl. This was absolutely trash. Nobody needed a uniform on. The only one that made a hit in this game was Micah Parsons. He was the only one that actually laid, I think, Tyreek Hill out or somebody.
The only two that played each other was
terrible.
Diggs and his brother went at it a little bit.
And that,
he pointed at it.
And I will say this, for what the game is, Mark Andrews had a very good game in this game. He had 2 touchdowns, 98, or no, he had, 82 yards receiving?
82 yards on 5 receptions on 6 targets.
To me, like, that was MVP numbers, not Josh Herbert. The numbers that Josh Herbert put up were trash.
Herbert was 7 for 11 for 98 yards, 2 TDs and an interception. How the fuck do you throw an interception in a fucking Pro Bowl game?
No idea. Well, there were a lot of interceptions.
I know.
There were
That's
a
my
lot
problem.
of interceptions. But how do you not have Mark Andrews as your MVP in this game?
It baffled me. It did. I think,
And that's not just the
completely got
Raven
snubbed.
fan in me, man. He was the guy that had the biggest game.
He led the entire Pro Bowl in receptions.
They really just need to get rid of the
receiving yards.
game, bring back those awesome like skills competitions.
Oh, yeah.
You remember like the punters playing tic-tac-toe and the weird quarterback events. Like,
Well,
that's
they
kind of
still
cool to see.
They're
Like,
still doing that.
But they're
They
not
did that this year.
televised nearly as much as they were.
But that's all they need to do. Like, take that, make it even bigger. Let Nickelodeon run the shit. Nickelodeon's fucking coverage of that kids game is awesome. Let them figure out how to make even wilder, crazier sets for these people to do stuff.
Make it real life.
and just do that.
So you didn't see any of that this year?
I saw a little bit of it, but there was a bunch of stuff that have gotten rid of over the years that were just like weird
they run
things.
it.
They're not like something, I gotta tune in to see this, but
Right.
it's still more entertaining than the two-hand touch bullshit.
Oh,
Also
I
running,
agree with that.
they also run
Absolutely.
those. They run those throughout the week. Versus, think about like the All-Star game for in most other sports. Before and after the game itself, guess what it is? It's all of those events. Think about like baseball. It's after the game or after the home run derby. It's the celebrity All-Star game, right?
Right.
It's the two things that people do like to watch.
And I only watch the home run derby, then I turn it off.
Right. But no, seeing something like that, I think you got to put more into, since everybody thinks the game is a joke, put more into those people.
Well, this might be the last one because this is the first year the players proved it.
Yeah, well, and
It
that's
was
the
awful.
thing is when you're doing this, you're when you look at like YouTube.
Yeah.
It's not. People aren't looking at the fucking highlights of the game. People are looking at the highlights of the skills challenges from years
Right.
ago. And when Harbaugh, when he was in the Ravens uniform, and then he's going at it, they're throwing the deep ball against Bledsoe and some of these
Welcome
other guys.
to Birdland, Marcus Wells. Glad to have you.
Yeah, appreciate it,
I
Mark.
appreciate it, man. But yeah, no, this is one of those things that it's like you have to readjust it, and I think you do kind of what MLB did and put a lot of emphasis. If either you make the game real and put emphasis on the game, or you put emphasis on the other thing that everybody loves to watch, which is the skills challenge.
Well, outside of Mark Andrews, you had Justin Tucker, who went 3 for 3 on his extra point attempts, no field goal attempts in the game. Devin Duvernay, who was there, didn't get any chance to play in this
There was
game.
not a return in this game,
returns.
period.
Yeah. Pat Ricard, I don't think he expected much play because they're not even running the ball much in this game. I think he was out there for like one, maybe two
He
plays.
was out there. No, he was out there for several. I couldn't find the snap counts. He was out there for several. He was wide open on that Andrews TD, or the first Andrews TD. But yeah, no, nobody. He even said it in his press conferences. He's like, nobody uses a fullback anymore. I'm just happy to be here, absorb and talk to guys. He said he caught up with Judon, and him and Judon spent like 20 minutes talking with each other. So a guy like him, guy like Duvernay, it's just the experience of being around that knowledge.
Yeah.
That's all that was.
They
for
had him wired. He was pretty entertaining to listen to.
Yeah.
Did you just say that Ricard said nobody uses a fullback anymore?
Yeah.
I'm really glad he said that. And that gives me like the slightest hope he might actually come back. The fact that it came out of his mouth, oh man.
Yeah.
Oh, you just got me a little excited.
he was
Pack, come home.
He was prompted by it. He completely agreed. So, but yeah.
To your point, though, Ryan, really the only entertaining part of this entire thing for me was the digs on digs stuff. Man. I mean, they even in the skills competition or whatever the fuck you want to call it, they did this like catch contest where they would basically do like almost like a dunk contest, but it's catching the football, right?
Right.
And Stephon Diggs was in his Buffalo Bills uniform. He jumped off of a fucking something tall and landed on a table like the Bills Mafia for the tailgate, which was pretty entertaining. Then Trayvon came in and flipped and caught the ball as he was flipping. No, I'm talking about during the skills challenge. And then in the game, they went back and forth with each other. They even switched sides where Trayvon was on offense and Stephon was on defense. So that side of it, like the family
There's
ties
some
and all
entertainment
that
to
was
it, but that's it.
entertaining. But that was really it. They do need to be on fucking...
The TD run where he faked out, where Stephon faked out
yeah.
Trayvon was pretty good too. And he's like pointing, laughing at him as he's running into the end zone. Right. And you watch Trayvon just go, shit, I'm not going to hear about this I'm going to hear about this for another year at Thanksgiving. Like, that's how it was. So, but yeah, again... they got to do something with the Pro Bowl. It's a joke at this point that people even I would venture to say that probably might have been the lowest watched Pro Bowl in years ever.
It was bad. Well, moving on to a game that should be a lot more entertaining. And like I said, if it's anything of what the
jumped
playoffs,
off a truck, by the way, John Gooks. Thank you.
Jumped off a truck. Okay, I couldn't remember what he jumped off of. If it's anywhere near as entertaining as what the playoffs have been so far, we're in for a treat. Super Bowl 56, Cincinnati Bengals, Los Angeles Rams. This should be a lot of fun. Right now, the Rams are currently favored by 4.5. Over-under set at 48.5. I'm taking the over in that, just flat out off the number.
Okay.
Rams right now, 66.6% chance of winning according to ESPN's Power Football Index. We haven't had a chance to really talk about our predictions with this. I know we talked about, a little bit about the game last week and whatnot. Where are you sitting right now with this game? How do you see it shaking out?
Before I get into that, news broke today. I don't know how. Well, let's just get into it. CJ Uzomah announces that he's playing in the game with a sprained MCL.
Yeah, I heard him talk about it, and he said, this is the biggest game I'm ever going to have in my life.
He's looking at me, I may never have another chance.
Exactly. If I can stand, I'll be out there and playing. The adrenaline and the drugs I'm sure he'll get will keep him enough.
He'll get drugs. He'll get
Toradol.
He'll be okay.
He'll be fine.
Hey, Antonio Brown, you need some Toradol.
He'll be fine.
Toradol is just Motrin IV. It's not a big deal. I don't understand.
But even a 70 or 80% Uzomah, I think, is better than the alternative. So having him out there, I think, is going to be important.
50% is still better.
I think it's important for their offensive success in this game.
Yeah.
But I'll let you start. Talk a little bit about this game. How do you think this shakes out?
Honestly, I think it's going to be a tighter game than what ESPN and the pundits have here. I think they've got it as a one-score game. I think it's 1 to 3 points. I don't think it's any more than 3 points here. So I'm definitely taking the fact that they're going to be able to cover on this because I think it's going to be a tight game. When you look at everything, when you look at the passing side of things, Stafford has more TDs than Burrow, but he also has more interceptions, right? The running game, Mixon far has outdone what Sony Michel has done. You have on the receiving side, you've got Chase and Kupp going at it. Obviously, Kupp being the Triple Crown, but Chase had a pretty damn good year too. This is going to be a competitive shootout. The defenses are going to kind of play a role in this. I'm curious to see, are they going to be able to get to Burrow and really put a hurting on him early? If they can get to him early, if Donald can get in, get the sacks on him, then it could be of that blowout side of things. I just don't know that they will. They've been able to survive everything that's been thrown at them to this point. There's nothing that says to me that they on the regular can't adjust. So I look at it and I say, I'm gonna take the new and better Joe Cool in this game to lead the Bengals. I think they're playing for Harambe.
Wow.
They're playing for Harambe.
To go this way. Okay.
I'm going the strangest thing. It's been a while since Harambe.
I had heard the name and I'm like, I don't even remember the story.
I remember the name immediately.
Cincinnati
It's been a
too.
minute.
I had to look. I had to Google search. And I'm like, oh my god, this was a while ago.
So I'm going to go, and I'm also going with the over as well. But I'm going to go 33-32 Bengals.
Oh wow, 1 point game. All right.
Yeah.
Ryan, how do you see this game shaking out?
Well, it's not hard because I'm going with the Simpsons projection. The Simpsons apparently had a Super Bowl episode. It was not the Rams, but it was Cincinnati versus L.A., which was the Chargers at the time during this projection. And Cincinnati won against LA in the Super Bowl 34-31. And the Simpsons are always right. They fucking knew Donald Trump was going to be president. So 34-31. And I will be putting an exacto bet on that number 100%.
Yeah, $20. $20 apparently pays out pretty well. All right, James, how do you see the Super Bowl shaking out?
I just love the fact, I don't know if you guys read it or passed it up when I sent you, they had a gang member tell everybody, whoever's going to this game, where you should go, where you should not go.
Yeah, don't walk down Crenshaw.
Don't
Stay away from Crenshaw.
Like, it's amazing. Like, they brought in a gang guy to tell you about it. And, like, there's always fights at the stadium. I don't get it. But
not with the ticket prices this week. It's going to be nothing but A, B, and C-list celebrities. That's all it's going to be there.
You'd be surprised what could happen. Like I said, I've been riding the Bengals for a long time. I love Joe Cool, the real Joe Cool. He keeps it 100. And I like both teams. I really don't. This is one Super Bowl. I really don't care who wins because it's all stories on every side.
Yeah.
But I'm going for the Bengals, and I have this game a close game, or it could be a disaster. Like I said, if their offensive line cannot block. And Donald and Von Miller gets to them, and sometimes they bring like a blitz in from their the corners. So if they can protect them, I have the Cincinnati winning 31-27.
Okay, close game.
All right, so this one was tough for me. Honestly, I was back and forth on this. I changed my pick probably 3 or 4 times. We've had too much time to think about this. All the reasons you guys have described are exactly my thought, and I've been on both sides of it. I believe in this Bengals team, and I have since they got into the playoffs. I thought that this team had a chance at getting to the Super Bowl. That's why we went heavy in on our fantasy draft for the playoffs in Bengal players. I thought that they could make it this kind of far. But like you've all have said, the challenge that Cincinnati has the offensive line, right? And Aaron Donald's the best defensive player in the world right now. You got Aaron Donald out there. You bring in a piece like Von Miller, that pass attack, and right now, Aaron Donald is on another level. Like he's
playing out of his mind.
He's playing out of his mind. He is motivated out of his mind. This is important. It's important to everybody, but it's super important to him. You could see that in his sideline interactions that he had with his teammates. You get an angry Aaron Donald out there, Von Miller. You got one of the better cornerbacks in Jalen Ramsey, right? So any of those balls that he has to get out quick, Jalen Ramsey's going to jump them. I think Ramsey has a big game in this game. Maybe Eric Weddle has another big game, led the team in tackles in the last game in the NFC Championship. It's going to be close. And like I said, I'm going with the over. It's going to be a higher scoring game. But I'm going to go Rams. And I know I've been on the Bengals the entire time. I'm going to go Rams in this one. I'll go 32-28 in this game. 4 points will be the deciding factor.
All
in
right.
this one.
There was something that I do want to bring up with this, too, is when you look at these teams, points per game, 27.1 for the Rams. Guess what the Bengals have? 27.1. That's what they're scoring on average. As far as points allowed per game, Rams 18.3. This leads in your direction. Bengals 19.7, giving up a little over 1 more point per game.
Yeah.
Right. This total yards 386.8, 385.2. Total yards allowed 286.7. The Bengals allow 395.7 on average this year.
Over
So
100 yards more.
100 yards more there. So there's parts of this game that are evenly matched, but there are other parts that not. It's just going to be how can they step up and do this. So,
Don't forget. I mean, this is going to be a super entertaining game from a wide receiver
so
standpoint.
you said you're going one more time. You said you're going Rams what?
32-28.
32-28.
The wide receiver talent in this game, when you're talking Cooper Kupp, Odell Beckham in L.A. He's a much better Odell Beckham than he was in Cleveland. Jamar Chase, the T. Higgins, like the talent level, even Van Jefferson on L.A. is a good piece, right? They've got a ton of weapons. It's going to be an entertaining Super Bowl. Like, this is going to be a lot of fun to watch. The only hesitation I really have with the Rams
Matt Stafford
is Matt Stafford. If Matt Stafford, Detroit Matt Stafford shows up, then it could be a long day for the Rams. But defensively, I like where they're at a lot better than I like where the Bengals are.
All right.
All right, fellas, it's time for the Liquor Stop Brew of the Week and social media shout out.
All right, well, let's start with the brew of the week. This is from Unita Brewing Company. They are out of, I actually don't know. I didn't look up where they were out of. So if somebody, Salt Lake City, Utah. This is their birthday suit. Ryan, keep your clothes on. Okay? This is birthday suit. This is a guava mojito tart. Now, I wasn't sure on this because tart usually means sour, and I wasn't sure you were going to like this, but give us your take.
I'll be honest with you, it's pretty good. It's not super sour, which I'm not.
Not blowing smoke?
I'm not a big sour fan. No, this is actually pretty good. You know me, I'll tell you if the beer is shitty.
To lie.
Yeah.
This is good. I don't know what the alcohol content is.
5%.
5%. Okay, so it's a fruitier beer for the equivalent of any kind of
Bud Light.
Yeah, Bud Light, Miller Light, any of that out there. So it's not going to get you drunker. It's just going to taste a little bit better.
Yeah.
So I like it. It's one of my better of the tart beers for sure.
Yeah, I didn't mind it at all. They said celebrate another year under the sun by soaking in the heavily pairing of guava, bright, refreshing mint, and a splash of lime. So nice mixture there.
Get up to Liquor Stop. Tell them Birdland BS sent you. Get your 10% off. Ryan, give us a quick rundown. Shout out social media.
All right, well, I got everybody here. Chuck, who was carrying this thing by himself for a long time.
I love it, Chuck.
Jacob Paul, he said, wink to the Giants. Can't wait to see Lamar dominate him next season. Ahmed Ghafir in the chat. Sharon Sherry showed up. John Googs, Alex Sanchez, Adit Mahood. Andrew Sakura, Craig Zero, Sea Iron Addict, Mark 2K6, who said, "Who is this clown?" about James while he was going off. That clown woke up the chat room. I'm real glad we had that clown here today.
Take a bow, James. Take a bow.
You all have been absolutely on fire since James decided to blow things up. So
we'll
thank
see
you
the
for waking
clown.
up the chat room.
I'll have to go back and read the comments because I didn't get a chance to read
And
them.
John Googs said, "Hey, I'm a redhead. Googs, we met you. I don't remember you having red hair, but
Yeah.
you're okay if you do have red hair.
You're not a
We'll
redhead
put you
in
on
my
the list.
definition. We
We'll
like
put
you,
you on the
John.
list." William Sable, Dave Foster, and Marcus Wells, who's a new person from one of Sharon Sherry's shares. Also, quick note, 80 people shared on Facebook the last time I saw. So
That's awesome.
Thank you, 80 people. That's
And I'm
pretty
sure
cool.
78 of
Appreciate
them
it.
were Sherry Reedy, so we appreciate you, Sherry, as always.
All right, gentlemen, it's time for your shell and tell.
It is time for some shell and tell. It's been a minute since we've had a chance to talk Terps, and there's been a lot of news, a lot of things going on around both programs, football and basketball.
Yep, we got the pipes and we got the homer here, but where's that expert guy at?
He's right here.
Welcome back to the show, Ahmed Ghafir. What's going on, Ahmed?
How you guys doing?
Good, man. How about yourself? Good?
No complaints at all.
Good, man. Well, I know you've been busy. I know you've had a lot on your plate over the last couple of weeks. Before we get into the football and basketball side of things, man, let's talk a little bit about what's new and exciting over Inside Black and Gold. What's been going on there? I know a lot of exciting things for you.
Yeah. I got a chance to announce the partnership with the Journals last week. Hired Anthony Mama. He's going to be helping out with the student perspective, things like that. So some content out from the next week or two. Ahmed Ghafir is another guy. He's been helping out with basketball. Helped out Pat as well. He's helping out with the analysis on the side of things. And then Chris Reza, he just had his first article recapping the Maryland cross game over High Point. So that was definitely a much improved coverage for the site. So definitely happy about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, lacrosse really started out with a bang. Did they drop
Yeah, they
21 points or something crazy on High Point?
They took care of that game one pretty early. So it was the first game without Jared Bernhardt, but it didn't show us any signs of it.
Yeah, they're one of those teams like the ladies basketball team where their season kind of starts in the tournament. They're just a whole different level than most people they play. But they got one hell of a schedule this year. They play every big wig there is in lacrosse.
Right, for sure. Now, outside of the staff expansion, we heard some new site upgrades going on. Tell us a little bit about the things with the new player series, thanks to the NIL.
Yeah, I was really happy about that. That's something I've been kind of working with on the side for about a month now. But I just posted on Monday a blog from freshman safety Gavin Gibson. He's just talking about moving in his first week in campus, reacting to the Brian Stewart news. So just thought it was a really good opportunity. Shedding the light on and providing that player perspective, things like that. Wasn't something that we were really able to take advantage of in the past, and kind of thought about it, and especially thought kind of leading up to the spring game would be a good idea. And then obviously again announce it on Monday on the site for subscribers, but more than elated to announce that we will have a new site, a full site with separate tabs for football, basketball, non-rev, recruiting. We have merchandise for Inside the Black and Gold ready to go. We'll have a message board ready to go. So, we're still working on a couple of things, couple tweaks, go live, things like that. So, on the tech side. So we should have that out in the next week or two. Definitely excited about that, but definitely some good things come down the pipeline.
Big things happening around Inside Black and Gold, Ryan.
Yeah, really exciting. The Gavin Adams thing with the NIL, that's really cool. Day in the life of a player. Just it's kind of the inside look we haven't had to be able to get in a while. So that's going to be a really cool series to see throughout the time that you get to put those out. And they're going to be out, periodically.
Yeah, it'll be every 2 weeks, and then in April once spring practice is rolling, every Monday. So be on the lookout.
All right, man. Well, let's dive into some football talk. Let's catch up on some things. There's been a lot of things that we haven't had a chance to talk about as a group yet. We talked a little last week about the new addition, the Wall from the Netherlands. I'm not going to try his name, Ryan. You tell me what his name is.
Mujezovic.
Yeah, there it is.
Is it close enough?
Is that right, Ahmed?
Lerajan Mujezinovic.
Okay.
I missed a syllable.
Yeah, I'll give you like a C on that one.
But yeah, big, literally and figuratively, a big addition for Maryland.
Yeah, heard he was able to actually enroll in spring classes and get in early, which is exciting for the Terps.
Yeah, he was able to enroll last week, was able to, after signing day, just finalize some things just because obviously coming over from Europe and Garden City and things like that. And obviously you got to remember when he was in JUCO, a lot of things went virtual. So just figuring out the credits and whatnot just took a little bit of time. But as you mentioned, he's on campus now. So 3 offensive tackles instead of the all 5 are on campus. So Lerodon joins Andre Roy and Max McCree, who's another JUCO offensive tackle. But especially kind of coming in, we've talked about it countless times, just with tackle being such a big priority for Maryland this cycle. Finding that 5th guy, and especially a high ceiling guy. All of his coaches spoke very, very highly of him.
That's awesome. I'm excited, man. You can't have enough big boys.
And we're kind of the kicker podcast, man. So this one got me kind of excited.
We tend to go to to special teams a lot, good and bad.
Yeah, I mean, we got, I guess, in my opinion, the biggest name there was in kicking in the transfer portal here with Chad Ryland. Wasn't he just basically consensus number 1?
Yeah, I mean, he was, especially by the staff, he was viewed as the best specialist in the portal. And it's hard to, when you look at who's out in the market right now, it's hard to say that there's a guy that's more accomplished. I think in Ryland in both facets, and obviously on the kicking side of things, where he's able to, he has improved length over what Joseph Bertino did, probably about 10 yards or so, I'd say, maybe 10, 12 yards. So that's big. But then the other side of it is when you think about during the regular season, when Maryland special teams coverage units just kind of struggled, you think about Ryland, who averages about 10, 11 yards more than Joseph Petrino on kickoff. So again, that's just huge for both sides of it. And it didn't really seem like kicker was going to be a priority. There were a couple existing targets that I had, just kind of come across and thrown out to the staff. But, with Harrison Beatty coming off an injury and Jack Hose, he is just not just there yet. So getting a guy like Chad Ryland, where he's able to come in 1 year and then potentially the NFL, to good fit.
17 consecutive made field goals, the second longest active streak in the country to finish the year. 19 to 22 on field goals with a 55-yard long.
55
yard long.
That changes games in college.
And I saw some warm-up kicks of him kicking 60 to 65-yarders. So the guy's got the leg for sure. Perfect 47 to 47 on PAT. So this is big. I think this is bigger than the credit that it's getting for the Terps because, again, especially with how this offense was once they got inside the red zone, there was a lot of production that the offense had between the 20s. And then we got down to the 20s, especially in the latter half of the year against the Big Ten. They just struggled to get into the end zone, but they didn't have the confidence in Petrino to send him out there enough. You get a guy like this in the books, I think it goes a long way for scoring for this team.
Hey, we've had a couple big kickers out there over the years that we've just been had the faith in it. It really felt like it changed the game. I mean, especially with the way this offense runs, just like the flying through the air. What happens? You get down to the red zone. Everything gets condensed. It's harder. But if you can basically guarantee yourself 3 points with this kind of talent, I mean, this guy, 141 out of 145 PATs, this is a model of consistency here. So as long as there's a good snap, that ball is going through the uprights.
Right? Yeah. And there were a couple of times where even we mentioned it during the season, during Big Ten play, where Maryland was kind of at that 35, 37-yard line, and, you don't really know where Maryland can go. It's kind of that no-go or no-win territory, and Maryland opted to punt it. So having a guy like Ryland alters, your third down calls. If you're able to get a 52, 53-yarder with the wind maybe behind you, things like that. So it just opens up a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely.
You punt in that wishy-washy zone this year, you're going to answer a lot more questions from media. We're not going to take that, well, the analytics tell us exactly where the line is bullshit, because 55 has been hit.
Yeah.
Well, one of the positions that we still wanted to see where the team was going to head with additions was quarterback, right? We talked about, losing Reese to the transfer portal and not having, that extra depth or the extra scholarship quarterback on class. Yep. Well, we get one in Cam Edge, who finished with 2,990 passing yards and 27 touchdowns to only 2 interceptions. Ahmed, that sounds real good.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely just a really impressive signing, and I mentioned it for subscribers, but it was actually pretty interesting that Cam Edge, it was around the time that A.J. Swan committed. Maryland has said that it was after A.J. Swan decommitted, and Cam Edge said it was a little bit before that. But regardless, Cam reached out to Maryland about potentially reclassifying. He knew that if Maryland was going to do it, or if he was going to do it, Maryland was going to be the spot. He was very fond of Coach Enos, Coach Loxley, and like we mentioned, the Swan decommitment lost that second quarterback in Maryland's 2022 class. So with Cam reclassifying, that's a big need. Unfortunately, you can't get him in for spring because he is doubling up on some courses right now to satisfy his high school requirements. But just for the long term development for this quarterback room, and especially when you think about it's now Cam Edge and Jaden Saray, two very well liked, well respected local quarterbacks. So that's another addition that bodes well.
Bump.
But Cam Edge, he even mentioned to me he remembered that Maryland was the first offer. Obviously, him and Coach Brooks, Scott Chadwick, Coach Enos, it kind of all seemed to really come together and was very, very timely.
That speaks highly of his character, and who he is and the commitment that he has to this program to value the fact that we were the first one to come offer him and then, honor that commitment. That's pretty awesome.
And you also have seen, kind of this flurry of reclassifications this year because people are trying to get in with the NIL kind of still being unregulated, the transfer portal being like the free-for-all that it is now, all these things. But this guy is kind of not your normal because this is a reclassification back to where he should have graduated. This is that old school, like, hold the guy back and get better and older than all your other people. Right. So now he got held back, was better, and jumped forward to his normal graduating class.
Yeah, exactly that. So that's why I kind of made it all possible. But yeah, you mentioned, and it wasn't like a Quinn Ewers situation where, like you said, it wasn't NIL. It was actually the opposite. He wanted to come in because he wanted to play under Coach Enos, just learn from him. So I think that's pretty interesting. But you're right. That's definitely an aspect of high school recruiting that can't get overlooked now.
Well, speaking of class, right? We've seen the ranking for this class vary and fluctuate pretty quickly. We've seen it in the 50s, go all the way up to the edge of top 25. Now with Edge in the fold, where does this class end up rounding out?
Yeah, kind of consensus right now is in the high to mid 30s, 35th on Rivals, 31st on 24/7. So that's kind of seems to be the consensus right now. A couple 4 stars. Then obviously when you think about Jacob Copeland and Vandarius Cowan, the Florida wide receiver and the West Virginia linebacker coming in. So 24/7 they do a total combined team ranking. I don't have that handy just yet, but yeah. So I mean, at the end of the day, I think that was kind of interesting. And you mentioned, I mentioned at the beginning of the cycle, I thought Maryland would finish kind of in that 30-35 range. And you mentioned that, Maryland was in the 50s. Logan Delizio, who's on the site, helps me out a lot. He used to joke that it was a show more class because on the networks, you would have to click show more to find Maryland's class.
Right.
So he let me know that I was well off my prediction. So shout out Lox for getting me on.
Yeah, I was actually looking for that number, so I'm glad you pulled it. I was like, I said he either said top 35 or top 30, and I'm like, I want to know if he hit it or if he was just damn close.
Yeah, I think I went top 30, 35, but I'm just gonna say 35 for the record since no one pulled it up.
And to be perfectly honest, the rankings on this is a little weird. I mean, you have 4 4-star athletes, not including the number 1 kicker in the portal, or Cowan or Copeland that were both 4 stars out of high school. And then when Edge reclassified, they took his 4-star away and made him a 3-star. So this could easily have been a high 20s class if they would have just left, the stars where they were.
Right.
Not to say stars matter, not to say the rankings matter, because Fred hates them. But I'm just saying, this is a very good class. And honestly, when you're talking a top 40 class, I'm kind of happy with it.
I'm happy.
You got to develop after that. You have to make these kids stay around, and you have to get them better.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I think Maryland just really needed to obviously just get more immediate impact talent in the program, and then but you need to create and build up that depth. So I think just being able to get in these consistent top 35, 40 classes. I mean, at the end of the day, what stinks is that when you look in the Big Ten rankings, Maryland is still last in the Big Ten East. So that's it's just wild. But yeah, you're right. You just elevating the talent level across the roster is
that East is going to evaporate. I can feel it.
Yeah.
We're just getting rid of these divisions. Let's go.
All right.
There's been rumblings for a while, so
you can have all the great talent that you want in the world, but you got to have the right coaching staff to kind of meld it all together, right? And there's been a lot of changes. There's been some guys that have been here for a very brief amount of time and then left. There's a lot to catch up with on this coaching staff. Let's start with the good in the new mattress salesman in Gunter Brewer, because that's in that picture is god awful. He looks like a mattress salesman to me. 4 decades of experience starting at Marshall, North Carolina, Oklahoma State, Ole Miss, and the Eagles before joining Louisville in 2009. Apparently also worked with Randy Moss, because even Randy Moss was like, damn, you're still coaching? Congrats. Pretty awesome. And what are your thoughts on Gunter Brewer, and what does he bring to this staff?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I mentioned it actually on the site, and it was before obviously the bad news. But I had some recruits that they mentioned that they met Brewer on visits and things like that when they were at Maryland, and all of them said that he was just a very fun guy to be around, very laughable, very light. So I thought that was really very nice. And then obviously on the field, he has the experience, obviously with, like you mentioned, the 4 decades, has a lineage where he has proven where he's been able to develop this top talent, and obviously coached Justin Blackman as well, and most recently Tutu Atwell, who's over with the LA Rams. And another tidbit with him is 4 of the top 5 North Carolina wide receivers in career receptions were coached by Gunter Brewer. So he's very much known as the technical kind of coach. And then obviously having the GA Derek Keefe back in the program, I think that duo is pretty good. But Brewer, recruiting wise, because I know everyone is very interested about that, he'll help out a lot down in North Carolina. And that's an area where between Miller, now Brewer, and Scott Chadwick, where Maryland's able to really get their foot into the door.
That's awesome. That's great, because you need that flux of talent from those southern states, North Carolina, South Carolina, that area, man. There's a lot of that's a hotbed for talent.
Brewer also coached Des Bryant, and if somebody gives me Des Bryant vibes, Copeland gives me hella Des Bryant vibes. So it might be a nice little comparison. Get him it coached up right and get going.
I'm excited for it, man. You get a coach that's held in high regard like that, who has that kind of experience with a wide receiver core, with the talent that we have, man. I think this is going to bode well for this team. It's going to do nothing but good. But we got to go to the other side. We got to talk bad, right? And we got to talk about this Steele debacle. Walk me through this, Ahmed. Make it make sense, because
that's not going to happen. But you can walk me through.
I just don't understand. How does a guy commit to something? He's here for 3 days. The rumors are that he's out and about and recruiting, and he's already got his name on the office, and 3 days later walk away.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of the shrewd side of college football. At first, when I saw it, I was just like, that seems kind of weird. My heart stops. It always stops when there's something that goes unexpected, and that was what happened at first. And I was like, well, let me learn a little bit more about this, because we had reported that Steele was quietly involved with the program. We had mentioned actually on the site, or another subscriber mentioned Kevin Sumlin's in. So there were a lot of guys that have been kind of involved with the program just behind the scenes. But Steele, it did everything sounded like it was expected. He had the verbal agreement. He was working. He was in the office. Was working alongside the coaches. And then kind of up and said, yeah, I'm going to Miami. And it's kind of been open checkbook down in Miami ever since Cristobal went there. Ever since the boosters, AD decided to go with Cristobal. That's really what it's all been funded by. But sounded like, even though Kevin Steele, I think between the Tennessee and Auburn jobs, he made, what was it, $1.9 million. So you can make the argument that money should not have been a primary concern, but at the end of the day, it money talks, and that was eventually the difference maker. So it was, you could say, worse than Josh Gaddis' situation.
Funny enough, guess who's joining him down in Miami?
Yeah,
Josh Gaddis is headed down that way.
There you go.
It's just this whole situation is just a shit show to me. I mean, it's apparently par for the course with this guy, because everything that you've heard with this guy is that he's been real floozy and jumped from one thing to the next and all that stuff. He's got a ton of experience, and he comes from elite level programs, and he's worked with some of the best. But this is kind of his MO.
What just blows my mind, like Gaddis was one thing, because Gaddis had verbally agreed this, that, and the other, but I don't remember him doing work. Being in the building. That's the part that confuses me, because when you go to a job, as a person that's not a coach, you have to go and you have to sign your papers and do all these things before you get
a
work.
check. Yeah.
Before you were put on the books beforehand. Right. Now I can see if that had happened, we signed the papers, and Miami with their open checkbooks just well, fuck it, I'll pay that buyout, I don't care. But that's apparently not. There was no contract. Yeah. There was no paperwork.
It's like he was never here.
It's can you imagine the conversations this guy's had where he's just lying to locks, oh yeah, no problem, we're getting it signed. My lawyers just look at the last page, there's some wording he did. How many times did he have to come to this conversation of Yeah, no, it's the paper's in the mail. The check's in the mail, boss. Right. Like, how did he get away with that? That's the part. The being on campus, the having your name on the door, the actually being on the fields with players. It's just so confusing to me. So you were just there volunteering?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. And you mentioned, Josh Gaddis, and there wasn't like an actual contract. From my understanding, what it was that he agreed with Locks, and he was still down at Bama. And then in between the time that he agreed with Maryland, and Maryland was going to announce the contract, Jim Harbaugh offered the offensive coordinator position, and literally in between that time frame, Michigan just got it done quicker. So that's kind of why the Steele situation, in my opinion, is undoubtedly worse than Josh Gaddis. But you're exactly right. I mean, at the end of the day, you look at Gunnar Brewer. I mean, he was a guy just like Kevin Steele, verbally agreed, was working, was involved day to day. And then, that one gets done. And then Kevin Steele, obviously, it just goes sideways. I mean, I guess in the real world, it's just extremely uncommon. But, you definitely do see situations where you see someone that's been applying to jobs, and then, a couple weeks in, they say, hey, I got an offer somewhere else. And, you felt like you just got them and they just left. And again, it's just like,
it's just weird without the paperwork.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. And then
I think it's a learning experience that Loxley won't do again. You sign the papers, then you show up.
And I think just between the Gaddis and now the Steele situation, I'd imagine things would change. But I guess we'll see next cycle. But it was not a good look to be caught kind of scrambling like that.
Well, for at least a little bit of time, I felt comfortable. I relaxed a little bit. Now we got a DC in place. Well, no, we don't have a DC in place. Is there any rumors? What's the latest? What's happening with the open? Because there's a lot of coaching positions open.
Why is it Brian
on this
Flores?
Staff. Yeah, I said this to Ryan early on. As soon as the Brian Flores thing came out, I was like, well, if he's never going to work in the NFL anymore, he should definitely should get on the phone with him.
He could be right up the street from the Supreme Court for when he needs to go down for his hearings. It'd
Easy access.
Yeah, that would be cool. But it sounds like it'll be Brian Williams that takes over defensive coordinator. Lance Thompson, we mentioned obviously on the site, national media reported it. Florida Atlantic inside linebacker coach. He'll likely come to Maryland and take that inside linebacker position. And then Louisiana coach Wes Neighbors, he will come in and fill in Brian Stewart's role as the safeties coach. That should fill out the defensive side of the ball. And then at the end of the day, I mean, we're just kind of, from my end, I'm expecting just official announcements from the program probably later this week. So again, Maryland didn't really have to drag out too long, and it was good for Locks for getting this done. But it looks like this is the staff for 2022.
Well, you mentioned Lance Thompson expected to replace Brawley Evans. That's important to me. The inside linebacker position is important on this team. There's a lot of talent there. There's a lot of youth there, right? And tell me a little bit about this guy. What does he bring to the table? What can Terps fans look for from him?
Yeah, he's definitely made some stops at Alabama, LSU, South Carolina. He's coming from Florida Atlantic. He did get caught or busted for recruiting violation when he was down in South Carolina. Just for
who has it these days? Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, at least it's not NIL.
On this team. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so he's another guy that brings in a lot of experience with from the room. He actually was also named the Rivals Recruiter of the Year back in 2008, and then an ESPN Recruiter of the Year again in 2014. And then he's be able to coach Mark Barron, LaRon Landry, Trent Richardson, Julio Jones, all guys that he's recruited during his stays at various programs. So again, you definitely need a guy, when you mentioned, just the inexperience with Maryland inside linebacker room, to add a guy that has that experience at all these stops is definitely big for the defense.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. You're speaking dirty to me. I like it. That sounds good.
Recruiter of the year
always sounds good. I mean, I don't know how Julio Jones would play at inside linebacker, but I like it either way. Work with him.
That's a new kind of talking dirty around here.
Dirty Terps, baby.
That's right. Man, so any other observations, I guess, of the offseason? Any changes potentially becoming?
I think
keep everyone we wanted to, do you think?
I would say so. I mean, at the end of the day, I know Coach Zon Burden, it sounded like he kind of wanted more money and elevation and title, it just didn't really, Maryland has a passing game coordinator. They had, obviously, Mike Miller got promoted to co-offensive coordinator, so that position wasn't there. So, I think at the end of the day, Brian Stewart was just kind of a sticky situation, and felt like, it just felt like that was apparent from the get-go, especially, from the latter part of the season when Brian Williams is kind of taking over, calling plays for the defense, things like that. And then obviously with Kevin Steele coming in, having to accept that demotion, and then Kevin Steele doesn't stay. So it's like, what happens with Stewart? So obviously parting ways, I think that kind of helps. So I think at this point, it'll probably be off-field roles, analyst guys. So we'll see. No Rob just yet, though.
Yeah, I think that this is kind of that part of the year where, spring ball is coming. The offseason's kind of over for a little bit. And this is kind of year where you can really look back and see whether the departures really hurt. Because when the departures happen, they hurt. Because you fall in love with these guys. You fall in love with the idea of these guys. Right. We talk about the Nick DeGennaros of the world where we're like, we just had high hopes. But when you get to see where they go versus you, I feel like you kind of get the whole picture kind of thing. Because if people leave and they're signing with
bigger
Michigan,
programs.
Ohio State, Alabama, USC, and you're like, oh crap, like they upgraded. They went we lost someone.
Yeah.
But we didn't really have much of that this year. Like I feel like past years there were a couple, at least, especially in the coaching ranks, where Loxley brings in his buddies and they prove it and they go on to another thing. Our coaches left to either equal or lesser levels. Our players left to equal or lesser levels. I wasn't, after I see all of it, I'm not hurt by anything.
The players, to me, were just getting opportunities. It was players that knew they weren't going to have the opportunities here, that they could get them elsewhere at a smaller school that needed, help at those positions. And really the only player I'm still a little hurt on is Brandon Jennings. That was the only one
100%.
To me,
that one hurt a lot. But again, he's playing a step down.
Yeah,
he didn't end up where
Kansas
we thought
State,
he was.
I don't know if Kansas State is a step down. Is it Alabama or any of these big guys out there? No, but Kansas State's still a formidable football school.
Yeah, still Power 5. I mean, he'll probably sounds like he'll start down at Kansas State. Sounds like he was kind of recruited to be that last missing piece. I believe if I read correctly, they returned 10 of 11 starters on the defensive side of the ball. So I think that's kind of that was a big fit. But you're right.
He's the 11th starter. Okay.
Yeah, but yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. Maryland didn't really lose anyone too critical. And I will say staff wise, I think just kind of having Mike Miller, Brian Williams, Brian Braswell, those guys were very critical kind of on the field, off the field. Those are guys that really I always heard very high things about. So I think just keeping those guys, obviously Miller, giving him that co-offensive coordinator title, and Brian Williams expected to be defensive coordinator. So those are guys that kind of just been able to get opportunities throughout their 10 years at Maryland so far. But just giving them that chance to the elevated role, elevated title, things like that. So I think that's something that Locks is doing a good job of.
And I want to give Brian Williams a little bit of credit here too, that he could have very easily got his feelings hurt when they brought somebody else in to be the defensive coordinator, since they had already let him do it in the bowl game. And I'm sure there were conversations that, you're our top guy, we're going to look elsewhere. You look at this Josh Gaddis situation. Basically, from what I've heard, that's why he bailed, is that when they thought Harbaugh was leaving, he wasn't getting looks at being the next head coach.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And so he was in his feels and is like, I'm going to go somewhere else and forget you guys.
Yeah.
So, Williams could have very easily done that same thing, and we couldn't hold it against him. But he was willing to know, yes, I'm ready for this, but I'm also willing for you to bring in some huge name that I can learn under for a year or two and develop to be that guy for you next, to be that coach in waiting, even if it is at a coordinator level.
Right.
So it's really cool they did that, and it's good to see that it didn't really burn a bridge there with him.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
I agree
100%.
with that.
All right, well, we got to talk basketball, although things are not good. Still struggling down the stretch now, under 500 on the season, 11-12 overall, 3-9 in the conference. Blowout loss to the Buckeyes the other night, 82-67. Not a whole lot of good, really, to talk about with this squad. I mean, this is the latest in the year that they've been under 500 since 92-93. Let me just tell you, that was 30 years ago, fellas, for the guys who can't do math.
I was 4, and I'm not sure Ahmed was around.
I was born that year.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Fred, how old were you?
I was 10. I guess the sole bright spot, if you want to call it, has been Dante Scott. He's the only one out there that seems to be giving his all, his full-on effort every night. 25.6 rebounds, both leading the team in those categories Sunday versus OSU. We can sit here and we can pick apart the roster like we have in previous episodes and what's going wrong. This season is a disaster. Like that's what you label this year. It's a disaster.
We were wrong
on all levels. Yes, none of the transfer prospects that came in have been anywhere near what we expected them to be. Having Mark Turgeon bail on the season, 5 games into the year, obviously nobody saw that coming. It's been a shit show, right? But the Turgeon situation or the Turgeon slash, oh my God, I can't think of his name. Manning situation, right? The coaching situation is what everybody wants to know. If anybody is hanging on to hope about still supporting this team, the future rides on this next hire being the right hire. And we've talked names over the last few weeks on the show. Is there anybody that seems to be getting a little bit more, potential,
Yeah, things are kind of moving. I get what you're saying. But it seems like kind of, and I mentioned it kind of every time I've brought up the coaching vacancy. USC head coach Andy Enfield, I've heard he has several ties to the university. Obviously, he's a recent grad, or not recent grad. He is a Hopkins grad, and just has very close ties with several people in the athletic department. I've heard financially, he is attainable, and I've heard Maryland has about $8 to $10 million. I've heard various answers in terms of for buyout money, but there are other candidates. Kevin Willard from Seton Hall always comes up. Ed Cooley at Providence, he's another name that's come up, though it just doesn't really feel like he is a viable candidate. And I've already seen news this week. Believe John Rothstein reported that Providence is already going to try and do everything they can to keep him there. Obviously, Maryland fans have already seen Rick Pitino, Bruce Pearl. Both of those guys have kind of come off the table. Pitino not officially just yet, but there's rumors that Iona and Pitino are nearing that lifetime contract. And then another one I actually wrote about today, a national writer from The Athletic brought it up. Cincinnati head coach Wes Miller. I think that's a pretty intriguing name. He's a guy that I believe he's 38 years old. He's from UNC, has spent 10 years at UNC Greensboro before taking on that Cincinnati job. And then last name, Kelvin Sampson, the longtime head coach. He's down at Houston now. Took Houston to the Final Four last year. So, multiple candidates that are out there. It just doesn't feel like there's a clear-cut answer, but I've kind of just felt like Andy Enfield. It seems like there's been consistent interest.
Been my front runner from the beginning.
Yeah.
It feels the most like Gary Williams. It's like a well-to-do coach at a big-time school, but is always going to be second fiddle to football. That's what, Gary left Ohio State for probably from better, facilities, better money, better everything available at that moment, and going into this disaster that was Maryland basketball at the time. But he was never going to be the show in Columbus. Right. And he came here and he was the show. And so that's why Enfield's always felt that way for me. The Mark Pope thing from BYU is like a hands-off for me. That's no deal. BYU is a totally different animal than the DC fan base that just ate Mark Turgeon alive. Right. These people aren't eating chocolate. They're not cussing out and going after your family on the weekends. Like, that is not the guy I want anywhere near Maryland's program. I don't understand that one at all. And the Rick Pitino lifetime contract just makes me giggle because, what is the risk of giving an 80-year-old a lifetime contract? How many years is this contract actually going to be for? Yeah. Like, when you got these 50-year-olds, 45-year-olds getting lifetime contracts, you're like, you're the best, and we're going to pay you for however long you want to be here. We're going to pay you till you can breathe for the next 5 years. All right? Like, it's a regular contract.
It's just the school trying to protect itself. It's a school in a little bit of a panic mode. They've heard his name connected to the program and probably other programs that they're just trying to do it to save face.
A 5-year contract is a life-year contract.
But then financially, they can just rework the contract so that, if he does leave it in a 1% scenario and, buyout is just extraordinarily high. And that way that's kind of the scenario. So, but yeah, you're right. At the end of the day, 15-year contract. No, that's not realistic. He ain't going till 95.
Right. Well, I think the Enfield deal makes a whole lot of sense. He's got a lot of local ties. Like you said, I think he got some sort of degree from Maryland, didn't he, at some point? Not just Hopkins.
Graduate degree.
Graduate degree from Maryland, right. So he's got the local ties. He's an East Coast guy. So we'll see what happens. I mean, no decision's going to be made until the year's over, obviously.
Dude, we're still paying a recruiting firm, which still blows my mind. That's like the biggest racket in all of sports.
But we have no money. Wasted on other things.
The hospitals do the same thing. Cool. I'll be a fake Jayco. Get out of here.
Well, Ahmed, man, we appreciate you taking the time to join us on the show live tonight. For you Shell and Tell fans out there, we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Ahmed, tell them where everybody can find Inside Black and Gold, both website and social media.
Yep, you can find us online at ahmedghafir.substack.com. You can find us on Twitter at Inside Black Gold. Find us on Instagram, Inside Black Gold as well. And you can search us on Facebook, Inside the Black and Gold. You can find me on Twitter, Ghafir the Turtle. So appreciate the episode, guys. It was always good.
And all of those things can be found in our bio link, which you all, I'm sure, are following Shell and Tell at this point, whether you're Birdland BS or Shell and Tell fans. Our bio link has links to all Ahmed stuff, all our stuff. You can check that out right in our description.
Ahmed, appreciate you joining us, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Appreciate it, guys.
See you guys. All right, fellas, it's time for this week's rundown. I've been talking for a minute, so I'm going to turn the mic over to you there, Scott.
All right, yeah, you guys went off for a while, and that was great episode. So I know you guys will also be you'll be clipping that, putting it out on Shell and Tell, and this will be your podcast for this week, right? I mean, so make sure you guys go check that out. And again, like Ryan said, go check out that bio link as well. There's a bio link for Birdland BS and one for Shell and Tell, so make sure you go check those out. There's links to everything for both brands, so make sure you do that. When you break down the rundown this week, I wanted to start with some bros, bows, and O's, since we don't have one this week.
Not a whole lot to talk about. But
not a lot to talk about, but a quick touch on some
the season's canceled. So
quick touch on the MLB lockout, some Orioles news. But I want to start with the Orioles news. This past few weeks has been interesting with some of the moves they've been making. The team outrighted right-handed pitcher Chris Ellis. Guy came in. He really only came in one game. I think it was against the Rangers. He did okay. It wasn't anything great, but
he was a body.
It was a warm body to be there. The interesting move for me, Hunter Harvey outrighted and then lost on waivers to the Giants.
Yeah.
Has feelings of Gausman 2.0.
Yes and no. Gausman wasn't like injury prone. We can't keep Hunter Harvey healthy. So could he go there and flourish? If he does, good for him. I was ready to turn the page on him anyway.
All right, fair enough. One that I didn't give a shit about. Pedro Severino is outrighted instead of being non-tendered.
Darn the bad luck.
But very telling, right? That they're straight out outrighting him. This tells me Adley's probably going to break camp. They're expecting it. They're expecting it. The other big one this week was a little bit of an interesting move, because I didn't think outside of Trey Mancini we would see this money, and it's not a lot of money, but I didn't think we would see this much money spent this season outside of Trey, and it is. As the Orioles agreed in handshake, because obviously with the lockout, they can't exactly sign the deal.
Were you listening to Shell and Tell?
I was about to say, have you heard what's been happening with handshake deals?
I know. But look, they signed a $7 million deal.
Nope, nothing signed.
Not signed.
Handshake agreement, whatever. They get a deal in blood, spit, whatever. With free agent right-handed pitcher Jordan Lyles. If you remember that name, that was actually a name that we had talked about 2 years ago when he was also a free agent. Has bounced around to a few different teams. I think he's played with the Rays. He's played with the Rangers most recently. He's a guy that he's not a wow guy, but he is a decent, consistent arm. Usually a number 4 in the rotation type guy. Yeah. He's a guy that you're gonna be able to put some innings on and be able to help you get around the rotation.
And now he's got another 30 feet to play with.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why he signed. He sold the pitcher. He's like, oh yeah,
oh yeah.
And in a corresponding move, he's been removed from the Players Association for this deal.
Yeah, right. Speaking of that, MLB, the lockout continues. The owners, in this past week, we did hear that the owners actually wanted to get a federal arbitrator involved in talks. All the owners got together. They agreed. They wanted an arbitrator to get involved. The MLBPA has the right to approve or deny that. They said, fuck you. We're denying it.
Yeah, they're going to be fucked.
About to say. Sounds about right.
This is just, I think we saw two things this week that just really sum up where the players are. And I think it's the wrong mindset. We saw a tweet from Evan Marrero that's going around. It's been all over social media. I wish the MLB was run by actual baseball people who love the sport and care about the growing game. Quick thoughts. I don't want to go deep in this. Quick thoughts. Is that a little esque of hey, we want people that are going to just give us money and care about the game and not actually the business that keeps us getting paid the way that we are?
Well, if they're running the league off of the right business moves, they've been making all the wrong moves because baseball's in a terrible spot right now. So this makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah. Marcus Stroman, so that's pitcher, obviously formerly with the Blue Jays. He's currently with the Mets and now under Buck Showalter.
Yeah.
He says, Man Clown and his boys need to figure it out and stop ruining the game of baseball. All over money. Billionaires arguing against millionaires.
Yeah.
It's annoying.
Yep.
Needs to stop. Needs to go away. These two sides have only met, I think, a total of 3 or 4 times since
For
November.
like 2 minutes each.
Yeah,
Like,
and
these meetings aren't even lasting.
They're
a
already
meeting.
off.
Yeah.
Like, the season's so
The
it's already
season's
off.
out of
that-
pace.
Yeah.
You're I think it's in 2 weeks as pitchers and catchers were originally supposed to report.
Yeah.
These aren't meetings. These are emails.
Pretty much. It's, hey, we showed up to the hotel.
Yeah.
You guys got it?
It's because
yeah, no? Okay, we're going.
because Zoom exists. They're calling them meetings, but
Yeah.
they're not meetings.
Right. It's been bad. But the other news out of the MLB that some people are happy with, some people are like making big jokes out of it. But it is crazy to see because this is a face that we've seen around, good and bad. 45 years. MLB umpire Joe West officially calls it quits. He said it last year. He officially retired this past week. Several players kind of coming out and saying, thank God, I called him, but he missed that call too. That was a pretty good one that I saw. But, I remember the game. I forget where it was. It was the plate. Somebody slid in and took out Joe West, and then Joe West went to get up off of him, and you saw the player go, oh, don't break my back. But no, it's crazy to see. It's a name that I remember. For as long as I remember baseball, I remember seeing and hearing Joe West being an umpire. There's certain guys that either
Wasn't
Got
he the
a
one
signed
that
headshot. He came to the VA multiple times.
wasn't
There you
he
go.
the one that took the picture with Nelson Cruz at the
Yes,
All-Star game at
yes,
the plate?
he
That's
was.
about the only memory I have
Yeah.
of Joe West.
Now I also remember. Do you remember the video of him? There's a line drive down the first base line, hits him in the stomach, and he.
Oh yeah.
He was a funny guy. And there's videos that go around of people sharing of him being good to fans and things like that. So just crazy to see, but.
All right, well, fellas, have you guys checked your social media recently? Because the NFL season's not over, and I'm sure another player was probably arrested in Vegas because another one was the other day. This one wasn't a Vegas player, though. This guy just so happened to be at a Pro Bowl, and he was a much bigger name. Alvin Kamara was arrested in Vegas right after the Pro Bowl, accused of injuring someone at a nightclub on the eve of the Pro Bowl. Turns out that the accusations were accurate. Video evidence is there to back it up.
Video hasn't been released yet, but apparently it's bad.
That's what they say. I mean, well, apparently this guy's eye socket was broken. So, it doesn't sound very good. This is a guy that, has got a lot of money riding on the, he's one of the top running backs in the league.
Yep.
He's only been in the league for 4 years, maybe 5 years at this point. I feel like Alvin Kamara's been in the league a lot longer. Yeah, it just doesn't, it doesn't feel like that. So this is a guy that still had a lot of football ahead of him. We'll see what happens with this. Sometimes these things get brushed under the rug depending upon who you are and what your status is in the NFL.
He's at that Kareem Hunt level. He'll be back.
Yeah. Ray Rice was on the latter half of his career when the domestic violence issue happened with him, and he wasn't a very good player, right? But we've seen the Kareem Hunts of the world who just the things just so happen to disappear.
Man. Choices.
And it's stupid, but this is just another reason that the NFL should have never put a team in Vegas. Like, this is just bad shit happens in Vegas.
By the way, where is the NFL draft?
Yeah, Vegas.
And you're talking about, these young guys that don't even have the money and
Put them in a fucking bubble.
and the things that can go away from these items and the people around them to stop them from getting in trouble. The NFL draft could be a real problem. We might see some news.
Right. Well, staying in the NFL, and speaking of news, right, we've had a crazy carousel of coaching moves that we've talked a lot about last week. Well, the Texans sound like they've finally come to a decision, and this one is internal as they're promoting Lovie Smith from defensive coordinator to head coach. Brian Flores was still on the radar as a guy that they were considering. I'm sure the NFL came in and said, don't you fucking do that. So they went with the other option, which was Lovie Smith. Dolphins end up hiring 49ers offensive coordinator Mike McDaniel as head coach, which he was the offensive coordinator for the 49ers. He is a minority. He is part African-American. So I think the 49ers end up getting 2 third-round picks from that.
So
the
crazy that we're valuing things like that.
Yeah,
but whatever.
well, that's just how the NFL is laid out right now. It's not
Valuing
racist.
was the wrong word, but yes, rewarding with picks is weird.
Yeah.
Is it not value? Like
Saints hired their own defensive coordinator, Dennis Allen, to replace Sean Payton. Dennis Allen used to be the head coach for who did
was he with the
coach
Vikings
for?
at one point?
I can't remember. He was a head coach briefly for like a year or two. May have been in the Raiders. I don't know. I can't remember. But
whatever.
anyway, this wasn't a move that I expected. I didn't see Dennis Allen being the guy there. If anybody was going to bring in a Brian Flores, I thought that the Saints would do that because obviously the fan base that they have there and just the stature of that program, what they've had for the years. And Brian Flores, regardless of the accusations and all that stuff, is a great coach. I just thought it would be a good fit for the Saints there, but they end up going Dennis Allen.
Yeah. And we can't not do the rundown without touching on what has started this past week in the Olympics, the 2022 Olympics.
It was the Raiders. Thanks, John.
It has started. The medal count, from what I had in here the other day, this was from Monday, it is changed, but it's not changed by much. Leading the medal count is actually the Russian Olympic Committee. Not Russia, because they were banned.
Yeah, right.
But the Russian Olympic Committee is allowed.
The Rock, ROC.
And they were winning. I think they're up to 9 or 10 gold medals now. Canada was in second place with 6th. Netherlands was in 5th. At this time we had the most silver medal, or the second most silver medals. Actually, I'm sorry, tied for the most silver medals in 3. We have since fallen out. I think we have 4. I think there's another. I think it's the ROC and Italy both now have 5 or 6. It's just been a bad medal count so far for the U.S. And COVID, people were concerned about how COVID would affect the bubble, right? We have a total of 363 people inside the bubble that have tested positive for COVID. For a kind of a scope, there's 60+ thousand athletes. That's less than 1%. It's actually like 0.006% that are actually testing positive at this rate. And a few of them have tested positive, and then 3 days later, tested not positive.
Right.
So they've been able to go back for it. One of the big ones for U.S. Olympic, the figure skater Vincent Zhao, he tested positive a day before the start of the men's competition. Because he tested the men's competition, he can't go into the qualifying rounds. He is officially out on that version of the rounds. So it sucks to see that. Canada and Russia, they played a game as well. Their game was an hour delay, first off. And then they actually all the players played in N95 masks because there was issues with the COVID testing. There's a lot of people also in isolation that are making complaints, and actually the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, is investigating the complaints, and apparently changes have already been made, but there was complaints about cleanliness, the food, and lack of training equipment with the IOC. Russian biathlon competitor Valera Vesanova said that she couldn't stomach most of the food she was given and survived on a few pieces of pasta.
I'm sorry.
They called me ugly and said I can't read good.
Deserve when you go in the middle of a pandemic to a country that was widely
started the
advertised
pandemic.
that the way they stopped their pandemic was they just literally put pieces of wood and locked people in their houses and they couldn't leave. You knew what you were getting into. They advertised that if you tested positive, you would be taken to the quarantine hotels and locked there for 2 weeks, unable to leave the country or participate in the games. This was all very clear up front. So if you are sad about your now living situations, they already put it out on paper. You have to know what you're doing. You're going to communist China. Their rules are the rules. You don't get to deal with wherever you're coming from's rules. Calm down, sit down, shut up.
Jesus Christ, we set Ryan off.
That's ridiculous.
You set him off.
Why would you go to that country if you didn't know this was going to happen? Come on.
All right.
Come on.
No rules. No boundaries. 2 topics. 30 seconds each. It's time for the 2-minute warning.
What kind of lazy ass gang sign was that?
At least I did it. Now there's weeks you don't do it at all, and I'm just left by
I'm
myself.
distracted when I don't do it. You were just like, nah.
In my head moves.
Going through the motions. All right, guys, it's time for the 2-minute warning. Ryan, you
It's
reading the
back
questions
this
to us?
week, by the way.
it's fine.
It
We're
is.
finally getting back to
We
it.
haven't done it in a
We're
while.
going to stay on topic. What's your favorite Winter Olympic event, and what's the most ridiculous event or that you hate as a sport?
All right, so my favorite event is one of two. So it's bobsledding for me is super entertaining. I love to watch bobsledding.
Especially the
You
Jamaican
just wanted the
bobsled.
Jamaican guy.
Especially the Jamaican bobsledding team. The other one, I'm like weirdly entertained with curling. I don't know why. It reminds me
Fuck
of
yes, I love
shuffleboard
curling.
on ice. I don't know why, but I watch it. I watched it for 2 hours the other night, and it was it was so entertaining. My mom was like, "What are you doing?" Because I was at her house watching the thing. To me, it's super
The
entertaining.
only Olympic event you'll ever be able to participate in.
For me, it's hands down the best Olympic. Like the one that I'm watching, I can figure skating. You watch snowboarding. Oh, you watch curling. Let's go, baby. Let's go. Hit it. Let's go. The one that I hate, the biathlon. Ski, shoot. Ski, shoot. Like what is that? That's not
My
a
wife is
sport.
very confused by that one. That would be her pick.
All right, next one.
What's your biggest non-Ravens Super Bowl memory?
Non-Ravens Super Bowl memory. Man, that's a good one. Do you have one off the
You
top of
can
your head?
go
Go
Ravens
ahead.
if you want. It's too hard. If it's
It
too
has
hard.
to be one with Tom Brady at least.
Yeah, right. It's
A halftime show
I
that
would
sticks
have to
with
say
you.
I would have to say the whole debacle that was the Brady and the Patriots and the Falcons going against. It's not the greatest memory, but the fact that the Falcons just screwed the living shit out of themselves in that Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And Fred was thinking about the Giants Super Bowl.
Yes,
Brady. I saw it in your
100%.
eyes.
I was like, damn it, he stole it. But I'm like,
Yeah.
no, he was going Falcons. Okay, yeah. So for me, 100% has
Tyree.
got to be the David Tyree catch. It's like the single most like moment
Yeah.
in Super Bowl history that pops out of my mind. Brett Favre winning his first Super Bowl or his only Super Bowl was a big moment too. But I don't know, man. There's so many moments in Super Bowl history that were good. But the Ravens doing what they did in 2000 and 2012, awesome.
Oh, no, I was like a 12-year-old boy. Janet Jackson's nipple's pretty good.
That was the first thing that popped in my mind. I'm like, I can't go there with that. All right, fellas, good show. Scott, sign us out, man.
Good show. Appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, you know how to find us on all of our social media pages. At Birdland BS is how you find us. But you can also check out our website, www.birdlandbs.com. While you're there, you can check out all of our episodes. We have links to the videos, to the audio version of the show. You can also check out all the bios on each of us, as well as get yourself some Birdland BS gear. I forgot to put mine on today. I literally had it in the other room and forgot to put it on. But make sure, I do have my hat on at least, thank God. But make sure you like, follow, subscribe on all the social media sites, as I said. At Birdland BS is how you find us. Make sure you also check out the Shell and Tell episodes that they're going to be putting out. Ahmed and all of the content that he has, you can find that link in the bio links that we have on both the pages, on the social media pages. Make sure you also, when you're looking for the audio version of the podcast or the show, of the podcast or the show, make sure you also drop us the review. It allows us to be able to be found a little bit easier. Make sure it's that 5-star review. I don't want to see any 2 stars. You 2 stars, you can go screw yourself. All right. I don't want to see them. I want to see
Great. Now
5-star
here come
reviews.
a bunch of 2-star ratings. Thanks for that one, Scott.
Yeah.
Golly.
Make sure we're on all the platforms that you find podcasts on. So make sure you go and do that as well. It'll fill your day. We got plenty to fill your day. All right. For Fred, Ryan, James, Drew, who is out this week. Hope you're feeling better, Drew, and we'll hopefully maybe see you next week or the following week. But for all of us here at Birdland BS and Shell and Tell, we'll see you guys next week.
See ya.
It's last call for alcohol.
It's time for the after party.
It's
So,
weird.
Chuck Summers, story time for your the the Super Bowl ruined my life. He said, but outside of that was a Ravens 2012 power outage.
Yeah, so it's funny that you chimed in with a Ravens Super Bowl memory because I almost chimed in. I didn't want to hurt your feelings. I knew you were still watching with the fact that they lost 4 Super Bowls in the row.
I'll stop that.
Apparently, we're just going to do the 2-minute warning again. Let's run through that again. Just like that is my earliest memory of Super Bowls was just that run that the Bills had, going to 4 consecutive and losing all 4. Don't mean to bring up bad memories, Chuck, but that is like my earliest memory of Super Bowls.
John Kook says, "Gotta go Miracle at Mile High."
Yeah, Miracle at I guess that's not Super Bowl. It was during the Super Bowl run, but yeah, that's definitely a single moment in that run that stands out to me the most.
You also have John Goog says, Fred and Ryan, if y'all want to come to a good lax game this Saturday is a good one. In-state rivalry, and Loyola is a sleeper team for natty contenders.
I know we had talked about it before. I don't know what you got going on this weekend, Ryan, but I'm game.
Yeah, I just got to double check with the wife, but I'm probably good.
All right,
cool.
Good. Maybe we'll meet you there, John.
Any good topics for the after hours? Anything that's
it's funny.
Come up, anything that we want to talk about?
Who wrote the 2-minute warning questions? Because
He did.
Did you write
He
them?
did literally
30 seconds before they started.
What is so
you
funny
didn't see me
is
go 2-minute warning to him.
What's so funny is he was talking about there was no 2-minute warning questions. He was talking about the Olympics, and I was like, well, we're not going to do 2-minute warning. So when he's done with this Olympic conversation, I'm going to ask everybody, what's your favorite winter fucking
Fred, we're always
Olympics?
on the same
It's
level.
hilarious, man. That's funny. And then all of a sudden it just appeared. I was like, what
Just
the
to
fuck?
let you know, tomorrow's National Pizza Day.
National Pizza Day. Well, there's only
I know
one
where I'm going.
place that I want my pizza from, and that's Pizza John's.
Or as we all know, Ryan, it's Lido.
Lido.
Which is open.
Nah, Lido's not even top 5.
What? I can accept not being number 1, but top 5. Blasphemous bullshit over here.
It's decent.
Oh man! Did you guys see that it was kind of a little bit before the show, but there were two kind of stories that came out. One was I know you saw, but Bradley Beal has season-ending surgery, so he's done for the season. The other one, DA announces that Dodgers Bauer will not face criminal charges. So all that shit with him last year, he is not being charged. He's back to
Refresh my memory.
Remember there was accusation like rape and sexual allegations against
Bauer?
Trevor Bauer.
Really?
Yeah.
Trevor Bauer.
Yeah, that's why the second half of the season he was gone. And he stopped his whole social media thing because he was getting big on social media.
That's right.
And then somebody made the allegations, and he said that it weren't true. His camp told him to shut up. The Dodgers suspended him, and it was you kind of never heard from him after that. And now here you go.
Look at your phone. What I just said. Look what Lamar and the Orioles posted.
Oh, I saw that. The
we
Bo
saw it,
Jackson picture. I sent it or showed it to him earlier before we went. That is one of like my favorite posters that I ever had. Was that Bo Jackson photo of him with the baseball bat and the shoulder pads and all that stuff. It was awesome. That was like my favorite picture growing up. I had it on my wall.
Any other
really
good topics for the after hours?
Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot. Anybody out there in the chat room still have anything that you want to talk about? Want to hear us? How dare you, Fred? Lido's baby. Get out of here, John. You and Ryan can have a Lido's date.
Chuck says, yeah, but even bad pizza is still okay.
Chuck, I 100% agree with you. There's really not a bad pizza because all pizza is good. But
Yeah.
Lido's is not my top 5. No.
Yeah, but let's be honest, Lido's and Pizza John's took a step down after our New York trip.
That's true. If I was going to
He
say
warned you that was going to happen.
if I was going to name like top 5 chain, they would be in my top 5 chain. But out of pizza shops in general, there's so many mom and pop shops that I would take over Lido's Pizza any day. Any day. But I think a big part of that is I'm just not a big, thin crust pizza fan. I'll eat it. If it's there, it's good.
Locally here, Gus's.
Gus's is good.
Gus is good greasy pizza. Like if you've had a few
You
drinks.
guys got to try. I don't know if you ever tried up here, but Zorby.
No, never even heard of
No.
They're in Edgewood. They used to be on Hartford Road. They got good
it.
pizza.
Okay, I'll try that.
If Pizza John's is good pizza, we're going to try it out.
We're going to try it. All right, guys. Well, I don't have a whole lot to say tonight. I've got a headache anyway, so it's been a long show. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks. What the hell was that?
It was my phone. I apparently was spinning it and the show came on. So
All right, we'll see you guys in next